The test tower, loading the 100th floor, a huge angel ascended into the sky, and dragons flew next to her. Then our main character, number 1 in the game Summoner Battle, or BC for short, Jin, appeared, and he said what stubborn freaks they are. Resistance is futile. They might as well not even try, since he's almost past the 100th floor, this dead game with 0 popularity and absurd difficulty, which only old-timers play. In it, Jin set incredible records and became a legend. He was called a monster, before whom even the tops bow, however. It's just a game. As expected. In real life, our hero is a complete loser. He spent 10 years of his life playing games and ultimately failed to enter university. His parents may be silent about why he couldn't find a normal job, but they are definitely heartbroken. So Jin finally decided to come to his senses. After all, he's already 24. It's time to start living like a human being, for his own sake and for the sake of a worthy end to his hero's journey in the game. Jin is determined to get past this final floor and escape. But will our hero be able to complete the game? It's not so easy to break free from addiction. Our hero summoned a window, and the guys who watched him play wrote that Jin almost never logs into the chat. While the other players were discussing how Jin was playing, the guy himself managed to summon a white whale. It was an absolute skill. The angels also did not lag behind him. One angel fired and several arrows flew at once at the hero Jin. The arrows were already very close to Jin's hero, but it seemed that Jin had anticipated this move, because with the help of the same whale, he was able to create a shield that protected him from these huge arrows. Although it cannot be said that it was easy for our hero, nevertheless, this is the last level and it cannot be easy. So a couple more angels appeared and they also shot arrows at the hero Jin while he was holding the shield. The arrows hit the shield and there was an explosion. When the smoke cleared, the angels decided that they had won. But it was at that moment when they relaxed that Jin struck. He managed to kill the angels, and there was not a single scratch on himself. Other players, watching the game, admired Jin. They wrote about how cool Jin was. But instead of victorious fireworks, the sky turned red and ash appeared. Jin turned around in horror, and he saw that a huge dragon appeared in front of him, and one player said something interesting. He said it was about a new world that would open after clearing the 100th floor. Jin himself didn't pay attention to this conversation. He was busy summoning the blue dragon. But other players became interested. Someone wrote that the admins wrote this for effect, so that people would play the game. Meanwhile, Jin's blue dragon intertwined with the fire dragon. They formed a huge circle. Jin watched the battle of the dragons. One of the players wrote, "And reality will become the world of Summoner Battle." Then an explosion occurred. And after that, the game announced that the 100th floor of the test tower had been completed. Jin was so happy that he started screaming with joy in the middle of the road. He didn't even notice how loudly he laughed and shouted. Finally, it worked, but people noticed it and thought he was strange, which is understandable. And yet, our hero was happy that he had passed the 100th floor and could now finally say goodbye to this stupid game. Jin was about to brag about his success to the old guys before he retired from the game forever, when people nearby asked what that was. Then Jin finally looked up from his phone and looked up. He quickly noticed a bright glow. A status window was displayed in the sky, announcing the completion of the game. And not only Jin, but everyone else could see it. Another phrase appeared in the window, "Beta testing completed." But Jin still couldn't get over the sight of the game screen shining in the sky. As soon as the loading was finished, red sheets of paper began to fall from the sky. And of course, people picked them up to read the inscription. The students were looking at the sheets of paper. As soon as the student read the inscription, a game screen appeared in front of him, asking the boy to tear up the summoning scroll. The guy decided that this was some kind of action, and he and his friend decided to tear up the scroll. The guys, of course, didn't suspect anything, so they calmly tore it apart. But Jin, who was standing nearby, knew everything about this game. So he shouted, "Don't tear the scroll!" But it was too late. The guy had already torn it, and as soon as he did, an explosion occurred. But it gets worse. After the explosion, a game screen appeared, which announced the opening of a new world. As it turned out, all the players of that game were right. After completing this game, a new world, which the admins were talking about, really did appear. Of course, Jin had seen all these monsters before, but seeing them in reality was a shock for him. Jin was so lost in the discovery of a new world that he didn't hear the loud horn approaching him. As soon as he turned around, a truck hit him. People nearby were shouting for someone to call an ambulance. While Jin lay on the asphalt in a pool of his own blood and looked at the phone, he thought, "Damn game." With the start of the International Players League, South Korea unfortunately once again occupied the last place in the rankings. In response to this, the association states the need to acquire higher-level summoned creatures, but some experts believe that the state budget is insufficient to purchase high-ranking scrolls. Upon hearing this news, Jin finally woke up. His mother became frightened and told her husband to call a doctor. And then together they explained the situation of the world to Jin. The news that Jin heard as soon as he opened his eyes was truly shocking. Firstly, 3 years had passed since the accident. And secondly, the way he saw the game becoming reality before the accident was not a dream. A stone golem entered the room. It turned out to be Jin's father's pet, and he was now helping his father load and unload parcels. He is very reliable. This E-rank summon belongs to Dad. And thirdly, the whole world was looking for Jin. His nickname is God Jin. The world's top players have stated that to ascend the challenge tower, they need to find a Korean player known as God Jin. Rachel, world rank 1, Jin thought. This name is unmistakable. This is definitely Rachel from the 5 Heavenly Emperors. The world of summoner battles has truly become a reality, and Jin has been offered to begin training. Mom said she knows it's all sudden, but he doesn't have to start training right now. It's better to rest. But Jin said no. He needs to get used to everything as soon as possible. He's fine, so Mom doesn't have to worry. Jin has nothing yet, and he still doesn't fully understand this changed world, but he is very lucky, because in this game he can become someone more than an ordinary loser, buried in the game. Jin gives hope to the other nerds. He is discharged and returns home, where everything has changed beyond recognition. He became completely immersed in studying the new reality world, where BP was no longer just a game. Duels, raids, treacherous dungeons, and the Tower of Trials. The entire digital infrastructure has been successfully transferred to the real world. 3 years have passed, and humanity seems to have found a way to coexist with conscript pets. Jin read all the news to understand the situation, and when he finished, he said that none of them would ever reach his level. Our hero's self-confidence is enough for several people, and Jin finally decided to start the game. A few days later, everything was as Jin had expected. There wasn't a soul here, of course. Dragging yourself into such a wilderness is no pleasure. But Jin couldn't risk letting an unstable pet appear among people. The reward for completing the training was 2 low-level summoning scrolls. Jin was strongly recommended to use it in open areas. Now everything seems real. Jin hoped that at least something decent would fall out. Even for him, a legend starting with low-ranking trash was a death sentence after all. BP was a real gotcha dump. Notorious for its slim chances, the rank hierarchy ran from C to F, and the odds were simply unrealistic. And the basic scroll only has a 1% chance of pulling out at least D rank. Jin prayed to the scroll in front of him, so that at least this time, if anything even remotely useful had fallen out, Drank would have been incredibly useful. But at least it was an E rank. Even if it was a useful E rank pet with hope in his chest, Jin tore the scroll apart. Activating a low-level summoning scroll, only then did Jin wonder what these summoned pets even looked like in real life. But he should have thought about this before he tore the scroll. Sparks began to fly out of the scroll, and the scroll itself began to burn. Jin threw the scroll on the ground, then a seal appeared on the ground. And then a little fairy appeared. Jin successfully summoned an EX rank wind fairy. Jin was very surprised. He couldn't remember if such a rank even existed in the game. The little girl yawned tiredly. Then she screamed sharply. When she looked around, the little girl screamed what was going on. Holy cow, she was actually called, for real, it's incredible, an eternity passed. While the baby was screaming joyfully, Jin was still silent in shock. He was thinking, since when did summoned pets know how to talk? And anyway, she wasn't a pet. Finally collecting his thoughts, Jin asked if she was Ramba. The little girl replied that no, he was the fairy of the wind. Then the little girl asked, wait a minute, only one person called her that. Could he really be Jin? Realizing this, the baby screamed. So he really was that same genie. Then the baby burst into tears, and she screamed. He can't even imagine how much she missed him. Jin asked her to calm down. It seemed that only the little one missed him. But Jin himself was not delighted and thought that he was starting to remember the E-rank summoning Wind Fairy. If you unlock her hidden mechanics and use the right runes, she can become a top support, which maddened the attack speed. At the very beginning, they spent so much time together that he eventually nicknamed her Ramba. But Jin thought it had been removed from the game during that massive bug fix in the first year. As stated in the official statement, use was suspended due to the discovery of a critical bug. Jin remembered he was furious when the pet Jin had been training for a year was deleted, so that's what was happening now. Then Jin decided to look at the description. The EX rank was isolated after the discovery of bugs that disrupted the balance under certain conditions. The little girl, crying, said that she had suddenly been dragged into some kind of abyss and that she had been locked in a cage from which she could not escape. Jin asked the baby to calm down, then asked who had locked her up and who had isolated her. The little girl was just trying to remember what had happened when she suddenly felt a sharp pain. And instead of answering, the little girl screamed. Her head suddenly began to hurt so much. Perhaps the creators of the game are hiding this information. The little girl decided to play the poor thing and said that it was so painful that she didn't remember anything. Someone had clearly put a seal on her that blocked her memories. Jin answered coldly, "I understand." Then let her tell what she remembers. The little girl was a little disappointed, but still answered, she was sorry, but she couldn't tell everything. They were all isolated. In the end, they couldn't be summoned no matter how much the players tried, Jin asked, meaning to say there were other isolated pets besides her. The little one replied, yes, they were kept in different places, so she doesn't know where they are, but there were definitely others, like about 10 pets. Jin thought for a moment, then cried out, no, this can't be. Those same 10 pets that were considered bugs and deleted while Jin was using them. If each of them was reclassified as EX rank and isolated, the little girl said, she doesn't know all the details, but either way, it seems like they get a chance every time Jin uses the scroll. She hadn't felt the call of a low-level summoning scroll for so long. It was crazy. But Jin didn't listen to her, he thought that means. They only react to the scrolls he uses, so he's the only person capable of pulling out EX rank. Our special Jin decided that this was some kind of hidden bonus for completing the 100th floor of the Tower of Trials. Is it really every basic scroll now? The one he uses is guaranteed to give EX rank. Jin tore the second scroll and got a gorilla, and he understood. Apparently, no. F rank, which means the chance of getting an EX rank still depends only on luck, pathetic gotcha, thought Jin. So the plan is to use as many summon scrolls as possible to gather as many EX rank creatures as possible. If Jin can bring back all the X rank creatures and become even more invincible than he was in his prime, Jin called out to the little girl. And he asked to call him by his name. The little girl did not understand why. But Jin thought it was because this nickname was thanks to the 5 heavenly emperors. Already known throughout the world, despite his excellent tactical knowledge and experience, he does not know how vulnerable he has become during these 3 years of absence. If it becomes known that God Jin commands X-rank beings, he will simply become a target for all envious people and those who crave power. Suddenly, an earthquake began. Jin asked what this sudden earthquake was, but the baby and the gorilla also did not know the reason. The system has announced the transition to the next phase. The basic training dungeon has been generated. Jin became worried and thought that right now, great, just great, he really did need to go there. He, of course, went through thousands of dungeons, but in reality, everything is different. Jin decided to pull himself together, but to tell the truth, he's very scared. But he won't be the one fighting. And this is just training, all or nothing. It's time to get used to this new, distorted reality. Plucking up his courage, Jin finally entered the dungeon, drops of water falling on his head. He is indeed in a dungeon. It is a bit creepy here. The system reported that Jin is starting training. Jin was a little nervous because playing this game on the phone is one thing, but playing it in person is completely different. To fight in a dungeon, you need to assemble a team of summoned pets. However, a team can have no more than 5 pets, and Jin currently has 2 pets. The system asked Jin if he wanted to assign an EX rank Wind Fairy and an F rank Hairy Gorilla to the team. Typically, to increase the chances of successfully completing a dungeon, a full team of 5 creatures is assembled. Running a dungeon with only 2 creatures may seem reckless, but with a clear plan, it is entirely possible. Jin has done this thousands, no tens of thousands of times. And Jin already has the perfect plan in his head. The Wind Fairy and the Gorilla are summoned automatically. So the monsters in the training dungeon should be simple. Only Jin thought of this. Suddenly a menacing growl was heard, and a game window appeared. A hungry gray wolf was wandering nearby. You need to defeat the wolf and get out of the cave. Gray Wolf F rank. Jin created a shield. It looks like the player's defense system has been recreated exactly as it was in the game. But now Jin is in reality. The system warned that the player would die if attacked while the shield was inactive. And now Jin was convinced that what was happening was real. If you lose, the restart button won't appear. Everything is real, and that creepy wolf too. Jin ordered the gorilla to attack first, and the F rank gorilla rushed forward. Although the word rushed is not quite appropriate here, The gorilla rather strode off to attack the wolf. So here's reality, which hit you in the face with a fist. The gorilla turned out to be too slow. But it's okay, because Jin has a little fairy with whom he went through many levels. And since Jin expected this outcome, that's why the little fairy entered. Wind pressure. Swinging the wand sharply increases the attack speed of an ally. The baby enveloped the gorilla in the wind, and it began to roar, and this time it really ran. Excellent, fairy, as always on top, but the wolf also seems fierce, even creepy. Then Jin got worried. He thought, wait a minute, was the wolf that huge in the game? Up close, the wolf seems even bigger. Now Jin was worried whether the gorilla would be able to cope with this monster. Judging by all the information Jin had, it was impossible. But what if, because they are in reality, some variable appears? Although it is unlikely, the wolf sank his sharp teeth into the neck of the poor gorilla, and all the fairy's power instantly disappeared. Then Jin shouted at Rami. The little girl shouted back, waving with all her might. Finally, it worked. The gorilla's strength returned, and he was able to hit the wolf. The wolf flew back, but it was impossible to stop there, so the little girl drew several seals at once. And then she directed all this power at the gorilla. The wind lifted the gorilla and it attacked the wolf again. Not just once, but several times at once. All the blows were so fast that the wolf could not do anything. The blows created such a huge amount of smoke that Jean and the little girl could not see anything. A moment of fear enveloped the boys, but as soon as the smoke cleared, they saw a gorilla celebrating its victory over the wolf. Little Rami screamed with joy. They won. Unlike the happy Rami, Jin sighed tiredly. It's not like in the game. The threat here is real, and the only thing that made him happy was that he was able to survive. We are shown Jinny. This is Jin's younger sister. She was paid for her work. She was happy with her jackpot. Today alone, she earned 2001. 3 years ago, when the world changed, Jinny received a profession, a rune collector. She mainly goes into low-level dungeons. She makes a living by selling runes to promising players. She decided to become a player because after her brother's accident, their family found themselves in a difficult situation. One day in a dungeon, she miraculously received a mid-rank summon scroll, from which she received a C-rank creature, the drop rate of which was only 1%. She was very lucky. Thanks to this C-rank shadow elf, she was able to establish a stable income from runes. Jinny's brother called, and she asked. He had already been discharged. Jean answered hastily, yes, he had been discharged, and asked if he had heard from her father that she was now selling runes. Jeannie got angry, and she shouted, she sells runes, she collects runes. It's clear how he can speak so lowly about her, Jin answered. Okay, a rune collector. Then he asked if she knew where the synthesis center was. Her father said that she knew, Jinny answered. Of course. As Trial Tower sprang up around the world, people needed a place to do all sorts of things related to summoned pets. This is how player zones appeared, where there are not only all kinds of dungeons, but also synthesis centers, improvement centers, and the like. Everything that needs to be done can be done right at the tower, Jinny asked. He knows that the towers in Shamasil and Hengdu have become test towers. In other countries, it's different, but in Korea they only have towers in those two places, so the player zone he needs is only there. Jin replied that he thought it was logical that they were near the tower since they were helping in passing it. Jinny asked what kind of creatures he got, F rank or E rank. Jin said both. Then Jinny said that E rank only has a 5% chance of dropping. Jin awkwardly replied, yes, it was probably just luck, and apologized to himself for lying. He said that in any case he would need her help. He wants to get used to this system as soon as possible, and in return he will give her some pocket money. Jinny asked. Brother knows that she earns much more than him. Jin replied, you never know how life will turn out, who knows? Maybe he will become the greatest player in the world, Jinny replied. Every second person thinks of themselves as the new Rachel or Glenn. These people are the chosen ones. They are geniuses. They are far from them. The little sister apparently forgot that her brother was a real nerd. Jin chuckled and asked, okay, let him just show him the way. After all, he wants to see for himself what this player's zone of theirs is. It seems that Jin is excited. So night fell and the brother and sister went out into the street. The tower looked pompous, standing out among all the buildings. Jinny asked. Her brother said that today he summoned pets. Who did he get? Jin answered. The wind fairy? Then Jinny replied, well, I've never heard of one like that. She asked if Jin would show it to her. Jin replied, no way, why would she even want to see her? Jinny got all worked up and shouted, greedy, come on. They are not strangers, and the pet will not disappear even if he shows it, Jin replied. Then let him show him his first. Jinny replied, okay, She immediately summoned the pet and told him not to be too surprised when he saw it. Of course, this didn't impress Jin at all. He just thought, I wonder what kind of pet she has, since she's so confident in herself. Finally, Ginny's pet appeared. Miss Elf was a C rank, a little different from Jin's elf. Seeing the C rank, Jin was dumbfounded. Ginny asked, what was this? What was this sluggish reaction? He may not know, but C ranks and above are considered nobility. But Jin coldly replied as he would say. Jin thought, damn it, the C ranks were the ones he only used to gain experience in the fusion center. They had never even been in the dungeon with him. Then Jin greeted Miss Elf, but there was no answer. So he asked if shadow elves could speak Korean. Can't she hear him? Ginny asked what he was doing. Jin replied that he was trying to say hello. With his sister's proud pet and asking him to look after his little sister, Ginny asked since when did pets talk? Jin froze. He was really surprised because his Miss Rami never shuts up. He asked disappointedly, so pets usually don't talk, Ginny answered tiredly. Where would he find a talking pet? Then Jin thought, but since Rami speaks, he thought that now all pets can speak. It turns out that Rami is a special case. And since she is special, it is worth hiding her. Ginny asked her brother to show her his pet. But Jean answered, better later. Ginny got angry and shouted, why? She showed him her elf. However, Jin repeated. He said that he would show later. Jin just didn't want to stand out now, so it's not worth talking to Rami for now. Ginny brought her brother to a bright street and Jean was delighted with the view. Is this place really the same arena he knew? Jean asked. Then Jinna answered, yes, after the appearance of the corporation's test tower, they simply demolished everything. Jin asked why. The genie asked why. Who would want to have fun near this gloomy tower? This place has long ceased to be kind and cheerful. Then Jin asked if that didn't make everything more interesting and cool. A land of adventure and thrills. But Ginny asked, the dungeons are now right in the Jamsil arena. Who will come here for entertainment? Jin replied that it was probably logical. The dungeons were indeed scary. But to see what Jin had only seen in the game. In real life, it's incredibly exciting. Jin asked if this was some kind of local market. Ginny replied, yes, here players can freely trade everything. From the summoning scrolls to the runes, Jin felt nostalgic. He remembered how he used to open scrolls and runes every day with that rich man, Pete. Ginny said she saw a brochure over there that covered all the basics, but if she needed a guide, she should go to the information desk. And since my brother is still a newbie, why shouldn't he try going to the academy run by the players' headquarters? He had a lot to learn, but Jin replied that he was fine with it, because Jin could handle the growth just fine on his own, of course. Ginny was worried. So she asked if he was sure he could handle it. Jin replied, yes, she could go home first and thanked her for the tour. Ginny asked if he was staying here alone. Jin replied that he wanted to look around a bit, which didn't reassure Ginny at all. She thought that he had been acting strangely lately, as if he was obsessed with something, so she was worried whether he could cope alone. Wondering if he would be okay since he had only just woken up, Ginny decided that her brother was probably just trying his best, so she should just keep a light eye on him. So she shouted at him not to overdo it, and if he needed help, he should call right away. Jin nodded and said, okay. Jin went into some deserted place and, having made sure that no one was there and would not be, called out to Rami. The baby immediately screamed joyfully, but Jin immediately covered her mouth and shouted, quieter. Of course, this puzzled the little girl. She mumbled what he was doing, what was happening. Jin looked around again, and he whispered to her that from now on Rami couldn't be spoken to when they weren't in the dungeons. Everything was clear. But this only confused the little girl more. That's why Jin said that we can't let people know that she can talk. Now she can only talk inside the dungeon. Let her nod if she understands, added Jean. The little girl nodded and Jean said, great, now we need to put everything in order. He needs to get some startup capital if he wants to start clearing dungeons. But the truth hit him at a time he least expected. The account was a bit empty. Jin knows that he didn't have much money before this started, but this was all his savings. It was such a shame. And besides, it was simply pointless to work like before. Jin's sad situation upset him. Some people might say, just ask your parents. But that's complete nonsense, and those are the poor parents these days. And so they work 3 jobs just to pay the rent. How can an adult son, the first child, ask them for money, then what? It will be different from the monster, so you will have to start somehow with such starting capital. The reason why no one could match Jin in the game was because he was a player who had never donated to the game. Although the game really wanted it, Pete said he spent about 300 million won. Jin didn't have any money back then, so he didn't spend it. However, Jin was able to become the best without investing a cent. and he can achieve the same success in reality. Jin was calming himself down, repeating that in just a little while he would definitely climb back to the top, when suddenly he was awarded 500,000 won. Then Jin cried out, where did he suddenly get this money from? He would never believe that this was a privilege for newcomers. Messages came from my mother that she wrote, my sister said that he has been working since he woke up. Knowing him, he would never ask for money. That's why I decided to send it. Jin was touched. Because all this time she took care of him, she probably doesn't have any money at all. But the mother loves her wayward son. She only asked that he wake up and be healthy. Jin couldn't help but cry. Now he was convinced that he absolutely had to succeed. In order to ensure that his entire family lived in abundance, Jin collected his thoughts and opened a store. The rest of us have been working hard for 3 years, so every second counts now. To become the best, Jin must choose a role, and to collect materials, he must clear dungeons. So first we need to assemble a team. Jin bought another scroll and tore it up. He got 2 weak monsters, F rank, but also got a baby lizard of E rank. Luckily, this little lizard was a poisonous lizard. If Rami is also an E rank, then Jin knocked out the pet twice with a chance of only 5%. Besides, the poisonous lizard's effectiveness is quite good. Now Jin has 5 monsters. Jin decided to use the poor stinky fellow for a short time and then simply recycle him. Now the whole team is assembled. Knock out pets, use the right runes, fight and grow. In other words, farming runes, hunting and tearing scrolls, all this is necessary to grow in the BP system. Jin can definitely handle this kind of grind, and if he can collect all 10 X-rank pets, a C-rank team, and the 100th floor of the tower, Jin will make short work of it. So, first of all, we need to find the remaining X-rank pets. Now we have a goal. And since there is a goal, we can get down to business. First, Jin must find the dungeon. In the mobile game, it was enough to simply click on a location, but it seems that entering is no longer as easy as in the game. It was sad, but Jin was curious to see how it would happen in reality. But as soon as he Googled the information, he shouted loudly, "What is this?" Gina was in for another piece of bad news. It turned out that even if you have a pet, you can't enter the dungeon. Dungeon gates appear randomly anywhere. The difficulty of a dungeon can be determined by the energy emanating from it. But now the rules have changed, and now, no matter how simple the dungeon is, beginners will never be able to enter it. To be granted entry permission, you must be an officially registered player. The plans failed. Jin will not be able to reach the summit alone as he hoped, and he will not be able to remain unnoticed for long. The guy was completely unlucky. Jin asked why he woke up just when the camp had changed so much. Little Rami, seeing how desperate Jin was, decided to cheer him up, but silently, as Jin had asked. She seemed worried. Noticing this, the genie exhaled and then thanked the little girl. Then Rami calmed down. Suddenly Jin's phone rang. Jin picked up the phone. It was Genie calling. Ginny asked what time her brother would arrive, and her mother asked what he would like for dinner. Jin replied he would eat alone and asked, she knew Genie asked what exactly, and Jin asked that player registration was now required to enter the dungeon. Jinna shuddered and replied, yes, she knew. Jin asked her why she didn't tell him on purpose. Ginny replied, not at all, she really did forget. This rule was introduced only recently. Too many people were dying in the dungeons, so the government had to intervene. There was complete chaos there. So now there are employees on duty at the entrances to the dungeons. But something tells me that the rich did this to take all the best for themselves. Jin looked for information, and it said that there is some kind of test, battles, and the registration process itself is tedious. This is probably how they control the number of players if everyone, blinded by the thirst for profit, rushes into the dungeons. Cracks in the social system are inevitable. Ginny suddenly remembered something else and said, there is also a rating. The system compiles a top 100 list of players in the country and the world every year, but Korean players don't even make it into the world rankings. Such a shame. If only they had the legendary god Jin, their country would have risen in the rankings. Jin awkwardly thanked her for the information, and he turned off the phone. For now, Jin had prepared for everything, so he decided to rest. In the morning, my mother cooked while my father sat on a chair and read the newspaper. It's strange that they still make them. The door opened and Jin came out. Dad asked if he was awake yet. It was only 6 in the morning. Jin answered yes. He needed to leave early. Mom worriedly said that he was already walking, so he should at least eat a rice ball before going out. Jin refused and said everything was fine, then turned to his parents. He apologized for having shown them only his bad side up until now. And having thanked them, he left. The parents looked on in surprise as their son left. Then Dad said, embarrassed, How awkward, and Mom, still worried, asked if everything would be okay with their Jean. Dad asked her not to worry, which was in vain, and said that the government had said that it was now conducting safety training. And he suggested having breakfast. The mother asked her son to be careful, an era in which all of humanity can become players. Among all countries, South Korea attracted early attention due to its exceptionally high death rate in underground areas. The reason for this was not the monsters at all, but the protagonist's syndrome, caused by greed. Players deceived themselves into thinking that they were the main characters of some fantasy world where anything was possible. So they recklessly broke through the dungeons and died, thinking everything was like in the game and you can change clothes. But this was a new reality, not an illusion. The foreign press speculated that because so many talented players were lost during this period, South Korea is now at the bottom of the rankings. Jin read all these articles and thought that so many deaths were only due to misconceptions. Of course, it's not for him to say he himself spent 10 years in this game. But to be honest, it sounds a bit pathetic. Weren't they scared? They were weird, and now it was Jin's turn. Jin's application was accepted, and Jin asked how many people would qualify as players. The employee replied that only 50 people who passed the final test would receive the title of player. Jin thought with displeasure, there were thousands, if not more, in line behind him now. It wouldn't be easy. And yet, even if he couldn't cope with this, he would definitely not be worthy of the title of one of the 5 heavenly emperors. Jean was determined, meanwhile, in the cafe. The judge from headquarters, Cedric, said plaintively, "They are going to choose only 50 people from this whole crowd. If they want talent, then they should select more. Nothing will move forward anyway because of these old men behind the scenes." The old man was calmly drinking his coffee, when suddenly some weirdo having destroyed the wall came inside. Apparently, the doors frightened him. And then turning to Cedric, he said that he had killed all of his brothers and was sitting there so calmly. Old man Cedric also turned out to be no ordinary man. His monsters looked even cooler. People, of course, decided to watch this performance. All eyes were on the old people, except for our weirdo, who didn't notice or hear anything at all because of his headphones. Our guy didn't hear the explosion, but he finally noticed the commotion and took off his headphones. Seeing this picture of 2 old men standing with their monsters, Jin asked what kind of situation this was. Just think, 2 men had a disagreement and now decided to turn a cafe into a battle arena. Naturally, people were scared. The girl asked what to do. They weren't going to die here. Why did the gang leader suddenly appear here so suddenly? The guy replied, "Everything will be fine. It's Cedric," he heard. Cedric is a real demon when it comes to fighting bandits. So Jin saw the bandit for the first time, of course. They turned to the weirdo with the scar, you can tell by it. Jin wondered if they were really using pets to plunder and steal. Cedric suddenly shouted, "This is an emergency. Let everyone immediately call their pets and raise their shields." The people obeyed. Jin also called Rami and summoned shields, since abilities and pets can be summoned in the real world, which means that not only dungeons are dangerous. Little Rami just woke up, or rather she's rebooting, so she accidentally called Jin. But Jin managed to shut her up. He whispered an apology and reminded her that they had trusted her and that she couldn't talk outside. Meanwhile, the bandit started talking, well, this is the apostle of justice. "How long will it last?" the man shouted and sent his terrible orc to attack. Of course it was interesting, so it would have been strange not to watch it, but it's better not to interfere in their squabbles. Right now, Jin can't help in any way, but if he watches, he can gain experience. Cedric had many fire pets. Apparently this is his main element, and one of his pets was a fire butterfly. The butterfly hit with several fireballs. They exploded, but the orc remained unharmed. All thanks to the shield, the bandit laughed evilly and shouted, "That's all the old man is capable of." Cedric winced. He had nothing to answer. It seemed that all his cool pets were useless. Little Rami said that Cedric was literally trash. Jean said that was kind of offensive. But people behind his back were saying that it looked like Cedric was being pushed back, and at this rate, he would definitely lose. It can't be. They will kill all the civilians without blinking an eye. Things seem bad. Jin thought about what to do. If Jin helps, he will eventually be drawn into this, and then he will no longer be able to remain undetected. But Orc easily cut through Groot's branches, which made Jin realize that staying away was a bad idea. At this rate, he would be killed, and he didn't even have time to live a normal life. Jin came up and poked Cedric on the shoulder. He immediately shouted, "It's dangerous here, tell him to go away." But instead, Jin told Cedric, no, he wasn't using the fire turtle skill quite right. Let him look at the buffers behind the blood orc. They are applying a fire resistance buff to him. Because of this, a fire attack will never work. You can't rely on force alone. Cedric only now noticed that the blood orc's body turned red every time the buffer behind him used a skill. Now Cedric knows what a monster looks like when resistance is applied to it. Cedric came up with something and ordered the fire turtle to attack. The turtle spat fire. She spat quite hard, and this time everything worked out. The orc couldn't withstand such a blow. Then the bandit screamed bad words. He could not understand how Cedric was able to kill his orc. And here's the reason: Cedric, with the help of Groot, killed the monsters that were helping the orc. And after that, Cedric turned on the fire at full speed. All of Cedric's monsters attacked every single one of the bandit's monsters. So the bandit quickly lost, all his monsters disappeared. Now the bandit is in trouble. And when he realized this, he started screaming in panic. Wait a minute, he gives up, he was wrong. But Cedric caught him in a trap. Then the bandit screamed for mercy and showered him with stupid promises that he would no longer kill and rob. Of course, no one would believe the promises a man made in a moment of despair. But Cedric said that gang members would be executed on the spot. It turned out that these were not simple threats. Cedric brutally killed the bandit, squeezing him as if he were a simple cockroach. And for some reason, people started praising Cedric, shouting his name and clapping for him. Although he had just brutally crushed someone, people considered the bandit an enemy, a cartoon villain, and therefore decided that it was okay to kill him like this. Each of them probably considered themselves to be a good, correct character while they rejoiced over death. And Jin realized that this world was no longer the same as what he knew before, and that without real determination, he could not survive here. Cedric approached Jin and thanked him for his help, then introduced himself as a member of the council from the players' headquarters. Thanks to him, they were able to catch this terrorist, Cedric said. Jin replied, "It's not worth it." Cedric said he would like to reward him. Could he find out which guild the guy belongs to? Jin replied he hasn't registered at headquarters yet. Then Cedric thought, the guy recognized the buff at first glance among tens of thousands of its types, and yet it was not yet registered. So he said, well then maybe he has an ID. If they can confirm the ID, then everything will be fine. Jin gave his ID, and Cedric said that after checking the data, Jin would receive the reward according to the rules. Then Jin said he would leave it to Cedric and ran away. When he left, Cedric called someone. And he said he just sent some data named Jin, let him check his identity. Unsuspecting, Jin happily walked down the street, not yet aware that his plan to remain in the shadows had failed miserably. Jin bought the little girl a treat as an apology for keeping her quiet. The little girl happily devoured her breakfast, while Jin thought that other players sometimes argue with their pets. But little Rami needs just a cream bun to be happy. Jin is lucky to be the girl's father. However, Jin was still worried about the situation. He was worried that something bad might happen. He didn't want to interfere at all, but if it weren't for him, they would all have died there. The world has changed much more than Jin expected, and now it is more difficult for him to adapt to the world. It looks like we can't put off hunting any longer. We need to collect the summoning scrolls now, and as soon as possible, call the next pet, with priority given to the drill instructor. Or the explosive mage dragon. They are E and D ranks, so Jin can get them from low-level summon scrolls. Here is a new plan of action. As soon as Jin came up with it, he immediately decided to start acting. And Cedric just found out that Jin had been in a coma for 3 years, which is why he wasn't registered as a player. He thought that if it was 3 years ago, just when the world turned upside down, Cedric didn't know that it was Jin who was the cause of it. In that chaos, accidents happen frequently, so everything is logical. The man said that Jin immediately applied to register as a player after being discharged. Now Jin's personality became much more interesting to Cedric. Jin seemed strange to him. Cedric said that regarding the exam this month, he will take care of it himself this time, and there is no need to even ask why. Having finished speaking, Cedric turned off the call and thought that it was one thing to wake up after an accident, but another to register as a player immediately after that. He decided that Jin was incredibly adaptable, which meant that Jin could become the real talent he had been looking for so long. Jin came to the exam. He, of course, knew that there would be a lot of people, but were they really all here for the sake of preparation? You have to beat all these competitors just to become a player. However, Jin was confident in himself. He believed that it was easy as pie because no one knew more about games than him. The doors opened and Jin waited excitedly for it to begin. A man walked up onto the stage. Of course, it was Cedric. He introduced himself as the examiner from the main office and said that from now on they would begin preparing for the written exam. A little later, already in the cafe, Cedric asked. Jin was a little surprised. Jin answered, yes, he could not have imagined that Cedric would be an examiner. But let's get back to the preparation. Cedric said that such problems often appear on the written test. If you look at the combination of pets here and so on, it's all just boring chatter. But Jin realized that Cedric was explaining the combination that he himself told Cedric. He should have at least asked permission before using it. So now when Cedric asked how the preparation went, Jean lied. Not that bad. Although he was slightly bored with her, Cedric replied that it was a relief. He was calling Jin because of the reward he mentioned. But before they get down to business, he wants to ask something. Jean asked what exactly. Cedric asked if Jean was a gamer by any chance. Jin didn't seem to understand what Cedric was talking about. So he explained that a gamer was someone who had played Summoner Battle before. And no matter how long he played it, anyone who has ever launched this game is considered a gamer. 70% of the best Korean players are those same gamers of the past. It would be strange if Jin knew about the summon buffs without ever playing the game, so he admitted that he actually played it. Cedric said happily. That's what he thought, then asked, and for how long? If it's not a secret, now Jean got nervous because it was almost a dead game. It was a game that no one really played, and if Jin said it was 10 years, they would immediately figure him out, so Jin lied and said he played for a year. But this was enough for Cedric to scream with joy. Cedric doesn't know that Jean is a nerd who has been playing this toy for 10 years. Cedric asked, Jin played this dead game for a whole year. Impressive, somehow awkward. Most of the best Korean players haven't played for even half a year. But Jin hasn't played for a whole year, Cedric thought. Then he said, they have prepared 2 awards. Let him choose the one that suits him best. First, within his authority, Cedric can immediately register Jin as a player. Automatic registration and immediate employment, as well as offering a position at the main office, which Jean was absolutely not interested in. And the second option, a cash reward of 5 million won. What a difficult choice, poor Jin. How will he choose between these 2 equally valuable offers? Cedric was thinking, not just registration, but a job at the main office, where it is more difficult to get a job than at a large corporation. Obviously, the first option. But his dreams were quickly shattered when Jean said outright that he would take the money, and Cedric panicked and tried to explain how important this job was, and that registering as a player takes a long time. But Jin insisted on his own. He thanked for the offer, but refused. Jin never planned to work in the main office. Jin is already busy looking for pets and has no time to waste on paperwork. The next day, Jin was already standing at the gate to the dungeon. The employee asked if Jin was the applicant. Jin answered yes. Then the girl said, as he had already heard, the practical exam is to go through the dungeon of the day of the week. This time he'll be heading to the Tuesday dungeon. The test is timed, so he needs to try to finish as quickly as possible. While the girl explained all the details of the dungeon, Cedric watched nearby with displeasure. He didn't expect John to refuse paperwork. Also, Cedric was worried about something else. He was told that Jean understood runes and pets better than anyone. The boys shouted that thanks to Jean, they themselves realized how narrow-minded they had been before. If all goes well, Jin might even make it into the world rankings. Cedric couldn't believe everything was going so well. That's why he's nervous. It's the first time he's seen these proud professors react like that. He thought maybe they should offer him better conditions. The explanations ended, and Jin was allowed to enter the dungeon. Jin, without hesitation, entered the second dungeon. Here little Rami can talk. The dungeon was filled with extremely poisonous slugs. It is necessary to destroy them and leave the dungeon as quickly as possible. Little Rami came to the rescue. She put a buff on the gorilla, who immediately began to beat his chest proudly. Tuesday's dungeon is a labyrinth. You need to defeat slimes, poisonous slimes, and find a way to the boss room. It is in this dungeon that newbies often wander, losing a lot of precious time. But the slugs are slow, you can ignore them and just run forward. Jin has been through this dungeon so many times that finding his way is a piece of cake. He took a couple of shortcuts and, as expected, came straight to the boss. The system alerted him to the monster's arrival. Jin was a little tense at first, as this was the first time he and the giant slug had met in person. The system wasn't joking about the size. The slug was huge. Why would a slime need a crown? Jin immediately ordered his pets to attack the slug with the luxurious crown. He told the guys to give it their all. Little Rami cast a buff on the gorilla, and the gorilla rushed at the slug with a loud roar. After punching the slug, it spread all over the floor. That was the reason why Rami was disabled in the game. Gorilla is just a rank F pet, but thanks to Rami, his attack speed is incredible. Jin can already imagine how strong another pet would be with that kind of attack speed. The boss was defeated, the dungeon was cleared, the clearing time was 5 minutes, which is very slow for Jin. When he was in the game, he could do it in less than a minute, but he's still an F-rank gorilla, so there's nothing he can do about it. The system announced that the South Korean record had been broken, and a special achievement, an advanced scroll, had been received for the first completion. And the additional prize is a low-level reforging potion, the best record in Korea, not at all suspicious. The broken record was immediately announced. Tuesday's dungeon was completed in 5 minutes and 32 seconds. The girl asked if Kenny had found a new combination, but Jean's sign came up, and she said she had never heard of him. The guy said he didn't look like a player, so it wasn't a player who broke the record. The guy stared at Jin's photo in silence for a while, and soon a meeting even took place. Such a record could not go unnoticed. Of course, everyone was amazed by such an unexpected record. The girl asked, "Is he really amazing? Is it Jin?" And Cedric was practically beaming with happiness, thinking that Jin was, without a doubt, a real pro. He was their national treasure. They must get him at any cost if they want to survive. At the very least, they must prevent Jin from moving to another country. That's why he said that we need to immediately register Jin as a player, the guys asked, really, even without a qualifying match. Then Cedric said that, as everyone knows, speed records are divided into national and world records. Kenny takes first place in Korea with a time of 6 minutes and 41 seconds. And Rachel holds the world #1 spot with a time of 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Jin had broken the Korean record, so would there be any point in the qualifying match? Cedric asked. He added that he believed that talent deserved special treatment, and that's how Jin found himself in the spotlight. He arrived at the large building, a little disappointed that he had managed to break the national record so easily. But now he understood the level of his country. Cedric ran out to Jin, screaming. He so wanted to meet Mr. Jin. It seems that the time has come for licking and kissing on the butt, so that Jin does not think of leaving. Cedric said he saw Jin's speedrunning record. It's incredible. Jin managed to break the South Korean record on his first try. Besides, the labyrinth in Tuesday's dungeon was incredibly confusing. Jin laughed awkwardly and agreed with him. But in reality, he thought it was like praising a fish for its ability to swim. Cedric handed over the player's license card and said that they immediately registered Jean as a player. Jean has nothing left to prove. Well, that's good news for Jean, but Cedric isn't done yet. He carefully asked if he could ask how Jin broke the record. Jin became a little nervous, and I thought that if he now lays out everything he knows, the level of South Korea will instantly skyrocket. The problem is, what will happen next? At best, Jin will live in luxury like Scrooge, but at worst, he could be kidnapped and tortured to extract every last bit of information. So you can't just mindlessly tell him everything he knows, the genie asked a little seriously. Firstly, Cedric understands that it is very rude to ask such questions. Cedric shuddered. Then he agreed and asked for forgiveness. He added that the player's strategy for passing the game is a very delicate topic, which is shared only with the closest people, but he asks him to understand that South Korea is so desperate for talent. Each of the men was determined, but Jean thought that Cedric didn't look like a bad person. Cedric immediately transferred the promised money, and he has a pleasant character and is also quick-witted. So maybe it's worth using the state to your advantage. If Jin plays his cards right, he'll be able to develop much faster. After some thought, Jin asked if they could move to another location to continue the conversation. They came to the cafe and Cedric said, "He will speak frankly. They really need Jin's help. Their headquarters needs his knowledge. Judging by Mr. Jin's data, he was confined to a hospital bed for 3 years. Hearing this, Jin became a little angry and asked if they were checking his background. Cedric didn't lie. He apologized and explained that a skilled unregistered player could be a member of some gang. Jin was still angry. He asked that since he was now registered, they wouldn't dig under him any further, right? "Let them never do that again," Jin ordered. Cedric agreed, just not to anger Jin. Cedric thought that usually when you mention the state, people get scared and try to cooperate as much as they can. But this guy didn't even bat an eyelid. He definitely knows his worth, Jin said. Well, he also thought about something, what exactly he would get if the state helped. Cedric responded. His assistants, Jin, looked puzzled. So Cedric explained. He was a little embarrassed to say it himself, but he occupies a fairly high position in the headquarters. The chairman of the headquarters are elected by popular vote, so with good results. He will get a lot of votes and will be able to rise even higher. It seems that Cedric is a politician, Cedric said again, so he will give Jin all the support he can. Of course, within the scope of his authority, this didn't really impress Jin. The rewards are vague, and since Cedric is a civil servant, he cannot spend the funds as he pleases. So Jin said, "Let's do it this way, just 1 month since he just signed up. Over the course of a month, he will focus on his development and seek support as needed. If he is satisfied with everything, they will continue to cooperate, and if not, he will return everything he received or provide equivalent information." Cedric thought, that is, Jean is going to use him as a personal secretary for a whole month. Impudent, but nothing can be done. He would definitely win if he stuck close to him, so Cedric agreed to Genie's terms. Jin said that first of all, he needs something. He asks to make sure that information about his new record does not leak anywhere. He's worried about his safety, Cedric asked. If it is about his safety, then headquarters. Cedric stopped abruptly and thought, no, Jin can't hope for protection from a headquarters that couldn't even handle one gang, and Jin understands this perfectly well. So Cedric said, I understand. He will do everything he can to hide the record, but rumors might still leak out. Jin replied, no problem, then he said goodbye. Leaving, he thought, great. He made sure that Cedric would remain silent. Now our hero was interested in looking at the awards he had received, and they turned out to be incredible. Not counting the reforging potion, he received high-level summoning scrolls as expected. The first-time completion reward, which is only given once, is truly something special. Jin wants to open them right now. But you can't take risks when you only have 3 scrolls in your hands. It's better to just sell them and raise some money. Suddenly, Jin remembered that there was something else. A network of players available only to players registered at headquarters. Almost all transactions take place in it, at least that's what the chairman said when he installed it. Jin decided to see how much they cost. He went into the app and then into the ads. As soon as Jin read a couple of ads, he cried out in surprise. The price was 3 million won. Jin wasn't joking. High-level summoning scrolls cost 3 million won, while low-level scrolls cost 5,000. That means Jin earned 9 million just by running through the dungeon in about 5 minutes. This is just the beginning, and if this continues, Mom, Dad, Ginny, he will make sure that they never have to worry about money again. Providing for his family was Jin's goal, so Jin first decided to sell high-level ones. And with the proceeds, he will buy low-level summoning scrolls, so there will be no suspicion. A drill instructor, and an explosive dragon mage. These are pets that can currently defeat even B-rank monsters until Jin can take advantage of this advantage. You only need to sell low-level scrolls, but low-level scrolls are trash that accumulates as you progress through dungeons. So why are they priced at 5,001? Especially since there are far more sellers than buyers, and the price is not lower. Jin came up with something and immediately called his sister. Ginny asked what happened. Jin decided to just ask Ginny. After all, Ginny has been selling runes for a long time, so she can explain everything. Ginny said that it is because the headquarters is buying them. Jin asked, headquarters, but why? Ginny answered, who knows, they say it's to support the players. They are buying up summoning scrolls en masse with government money, and the minimum price is 5,001. But the daily quantity of purchases is limited. Since they can always be sold to headquarters, no one even thinks of lowering the price. However, she heard that this shop might soon close down. Jin asked why. Ginny answered that this policy has been in effect from the very beginning, and the headquarters had accumulated a pile of unnecessary low-level scrolls. Jin liked the news. He thanked them for their help and disconnected the connection. Jin learned that the headquarters had accumulated an excess of low-level scrolls that he desperately needed, so Jin went to see Cedric the very next day. Cedric, as always, greeted Jin with a wide smile and said that Jin had already missed him and that he hadn't thought that Jin would return so soon. Jin responded with displeasure. It just happened that way. Cedric asked if Jin needed something, then Jin said a little awkwardly, he would like to get some low-level summoning scrolls. Cedric asked if they were medium or high level and how many he needed. Jin replied as many as possible. Then Cedric thought, they receive 50,000 pieces every day, so giving them away is not a problem. But Cedric said he could give them to him, but only if John was going to resell them. Jin sighed and said that he wasn't going to do anything like that, since there was already an overabundance of them on the market and they weren't selling. He was going to use them himself. Cedric said that it seemed like Jin had some kind of plan. Of course, Jin was not going to reveal his cards. Cedric understood that Jin was not a player like the others. Since he was purposefully collecting low-level summoning scrolls, it meant he had something special in mind, so Cedric agreed. But he has one condition. In exchange, he asks Jin to provide him with at least some useful information. He is the chairman, elected by the people, but if it becomes known that he will simply give away the scrolls bought with taxpayers' money, the people's trust in him will weaken, so if Jin gives him information, he will give him an equivalent number of scrolls. After all, he also needed some kind of insurance, Jin thought, which meant that Cedric wouldn't just give them up. That's even better. It means if he gives valuable information, he will receive a generous reward. Jin said, firstly, there is such a thing as a time record. The reward for first place in the country is 3 high-level summon scrolls for each dungeon. However, this reward can be obtained again if another player breaks the record. Therefore, if players take turns improving the record by just 1 second, they will be able to get the maximum rewards. This is how they can strengthen their country, Cedric said. Of course, they use this method. Current players have already received their share, but there are many players who have never received this award. So there won't be a big problem because of this, Jin said, and the second information that he will reveal. This is the strategy for passing the Tuesday dungeon. Cedric began to clap his hands with joy and said, as he thought, the same method that Jin used, Jin thought. No, it wasn't him. It was used by the 5 emperors. With this method, anyone can complete it in 3 minutes. They just need to clearly agree on the price of this information. In addition to the low-level scrolls they talked about, he also wants 50 high-level ones, Cedric shouted. That's 150 million. Jin stated that it was quite cheap, and that this method could be used not only in low-level dungeons, but also in difficult ones. After all, the rewards for records there could be in the billions. Cedric thought for a bit and agreed. He said that if the information was correct, he would immediately transfer 150 million, and will supply him with 10,000 low-level summoning scrolls daily. In the evening, Cedric gathered everyone, and the man asked why Cedric called them so suddenly. Cedric said happily. He gathered them to check something, then the guy asked, "It's unlikely that Cedric collected them because of some trifle, which means this is not just another experiment." Cedric asked if they knew that they had recently broken the record in the Tuesday dungeon. The guys replied, "Yes, I think it was Jin." Then Cedric proudly said that he had managed to get hold of an excellent strategy abroad, and he had tested it with the player Jin. And the results were excellent, the guy said, so that's why Cedric forbade the dissemination of this information. Another asked, "So Cedric gathered them for this," Cedric said. "Now they will smash Tuesday's dungeon to smithereens. The key pet for completing this dungeon is this little one." The boys gathered to see this spotted Komodo, this little summonable monitor lizard. The size of an adult human, it has strong defense and a decent attack, a typical tank damage dealer. At least that's what the publicly available information says, but in reality, it's difficult to level up, which is expected for a B rank, so it was considered defective. Compared to other B rank pets, its damage and defense are so-so, making it considered useless. However, what the players didn't know was that his main food was the giant slimes that were plentiful in Tuesday's dungeon. Once released into a dungeon, it immediately begins hunting giant slimes, allowing you to quickly clear everything. The guys were delighted. They said the chairman was right. They got to the boss's room in less than 4 minutes. They rejoiced for a long time and shouted that the baby lizard was a real gold mine several days later. Everything was confirmed. Jin was not just some freshman gamer, so Cedric decided to create a team specifically for Jin. He chose 3 guys who would be on his team. Cedric was happy with his plan. And Jin was glad to receive the money. Jin said that this bearded man is really generous. Little Rami was also happy about the money because Jin would buy her a bunch of buns, just as the bearded man had promised. Jin received 10,000 low-level summoning scrolls that employee gave him this morning. And since the bearded man had kept his promise, Jin decided that it was now his turn. Jin asked if Rami was ready. The baby nodded. Then Jin poured water on the ground. And the little girl portrayed Buddha. She prayed to Buddha, Allah, the spirits of heaven and earth. And all for the sake of getting a pet with a good rank, Jin took out a scroll. The endless farm begins. While Rami was praying, Jin tore the first scroll. But after some time, Jin lay powerlessly on the ground. Of course, most of the scrolls were garbage. In an hour, Jin had already used 3,600 scrolls, and he had not once received a normal pet. But little Rami said, "Who said it would be easy? Jin thinks it's that easy to get an EX rank pet." Jin asked sadly. "But why? She got it on the first try," Rami shouted. "It was pure luck. To knock something like that out, even 100,000 scrolls wouldn't be enough, let alone 10. Jin asked what she was talking about. Then Rami asked if Jin knew anything at all about the summoning system. She began to explain that there were exactly 10 times fewer pets than players. 8 billion people, 800 million creatures. There are 800 million of those same horned caterpillars that Jin just summoned. But most importantly, those who are isolated exist in a single copy. Jin shouted that, "But why?" Rami replied. She herself does not know why. But she knows for sure that only Jin can summon isolated EX rank pets. There are tens of thousands of species of creatures, and 800 million of each species. And from all this diversity, you need to pull out a single X rank creature. It's easier to win the lottery several times in a row. Rami calmed Jin down. She said there was no need to worry when someone had already summoned the pet. It will not drop again until it is sold, such as if all 800 million horned caterpillars are summoned. The horned caterpillars would never appear in future summons, Jin said. But it was still nearly impossible. Rami agreed with this. Jin thought a little melancholically, maybe he should try the mid-level scrolls. No, it's not effective, they're expensive, and there aren't many of them in circulation, so the chances are slim to none, but Jin has no choice but to continue, and Jin understood this perfectly well. He continued to look for new X-rank pets. Jin plopped down on the bed exhausted. Little Rami was also tired. She asked for a bun. In 2 weeks, Jin opened 140,000 summoning scrolls. Rami was also tired. The poor thing almost died. In order to synthesize pets, Jin Dale rented a room next to the player area. Well, he can't sit on his parents' necks forever. He'll be 30 in a couple of years. It was high time to move out. Despite his fatigue, Jin got up. He was going to go synthesize pets. He told Rami to get up, but the little girl didn't want to hear about work. All she wanted was a bun. The Fusion Center, a former hotel, is how the Manhwa Tower became a testing tower. Other buildings were also transformed. For example, this hotel became a center of synthesis. It seems that the local buffet used to be quite popular, so Jin went and got himself a ticket. Rami told Jin not to make a mistake. Let him look carefully before adding, "It was their turn," and they went into the hall. Jin said he had a lot of hope for Rami. The little girl replied they could handle it. The system window opened and Jin was asked to merge his pets. He selected Rami and registered her, and the pet synchronization began. Jin donated 3 F-rank lizards, an F-rank blue bat, and an F-rank poison goblin. All 3 copies, there really are a lot of them, so he pumped up little Rami, the unification was completed. Rami's level and intelligence have been increased to 21 and intelligence by 2. Just think, only the 21st level of the ambassador of 140,000 scrolls. But Jin tried to hide his disappointment. After all, little Rami was happy about her increased strength. She asked if she was strong now. Jin answered, "Yes, their Rami is the best. The maximum level is 100. At this rate, it will take forever." A few days later, Cedric said, "Things are going unusually well today, yes." Ben was wondering why he was so happy, and Cedric was wondering why he needed to invest heavily in Jin now that he had built a talent team. Cedric asked Ben what Jin was doing now. Ben replied that he seemed to still be opening summoning scrolls. There were even more of them today. Cedric was surprised. He didn't expect John to continue this boring activity. And Ben said, and Jin also asked, whether it would be possible to buy more low-level scrolls with the 150 million won he had received. Jin asked if it was possible to buy them at a reduced price, and he replied that he would check, but the management bureau already looked at them askance because of that. What, they are constantly buying them up? What will they do, Cedric thought. Jin puts everything into non-transferable low-level scrolls and reinvests. He definitely has some kind of plan. Then Cedric said, "Let him sell them to Jin for half price." Ben shouted, "Seriously? What if they get caught giving such privileges?" But Cedric said not to worry. Cedric believed that Jin could become a hero of Korea in the future, and when it turns out that he supported him, no matter what, his rating will skyrocket. It's questionable whether Cedric is doing this for Korea or for himself. Cedric said for now they should just do what he says, and one more thing. This had to stay between Ben, him, Yuna, and Sam, Cedric warned. And our Jin continued his routine work. Behind a pile of torn scrolls, there was a mountain of untouched ones. The baby was already tired. She asked how much longer. She couldn't feel her hands anymore. Jin answered, "Until they both die." But at that moment, Miss came up to them and said hello, and Rami shut her mouth in time. The beautiful girl introduced herself. This is the same Yuna that Cedric was talking about. Jin greeted her tiredly and asked what brought her. Yuna answered, "Well, nothing special. She's talking about the summoning scrolls that Jin talked about with the chairman last time." Jin said he asked if it was possible to come to some kind of agreement. Yuna answered cheerfully, "They were enlightened here." And, taking into account Mr. Jin's recent achievements, they decided that this time, as a special exception, they are willing to sell them to him for half price. Jin did not expect that. But is it worth climbing into the van if you are offered candy? And besides, Yuna continued, they decided to give Jin an additional 100 million won under the talent management expenses item. However, Jin must keep all this a secret. Jin, who loves money, nodded back to her. And Yuna said that she hoped he understood that this was for the sake of her relationship with Mr. Jin. Jin was happy and nodded like a puppy. Then Yuna said, well, he must be busy, so she would go. A satisfied Jin watched her go and thought that the chairman had apparently firmly decided to trust him. And in order to repay the chairman, he must obtain EX rank as soon as possible. A couple more hours passed. The sun set, it was already dark, and Jin continued to tear up these scrolls. The baby was exhausted, they asked. How much longer can this go on? Her arms are about to fall off. Jin was in the same condition. He said they wouldn't finish until they got a drill instructor and an explosive dragon mage. Rami screamed. Her torn head would soon burst from the sound. Jin thought that it seemed like there was no other way out since they had gone this far. They should at least be knocked out of their stubbornness. He prayed silently for the dragon mage or instructor to fall out. And lo and behold, a bright light appeared. The effect was exactly the same as when Jin received Rami. Finally, the prayers were answered. Jin received the explosive dragon mage. The boys even burst into tears of joy. Both of them screamed, they did it, they succeeded. Now he could have died, but Jin stopped himself in time, deciding that now was not the time to relax. Jin said they can't stop. They're on a wave now. Rami didn't understand anything. It's all simple, as they say, strike while the hammer is being forged, so Jin took out the next scroll. When you get a good drop, you need to keep going to get more good pets. Luck was on his side. He actually got the drill instructor he had been praying for. Rami asked if the wave was real. Jin was overjoyed. He no longer hid his tears. Both heroes are finally with Jin. It seems they still don't understand why Jin is crying. Both the instructor and the mage were also EX rank. The instructor asked where he was. He was originally E rank and had low combat abilities, so he was unpopular. But the whole value of this guy is that he is simply obsessed with training. The instructor himself is weak and his basic skills are unremarkable. But once it evolves and gains the instructor skill, it unlocks the potential of other summoned pets and significantly accelerates their growth. It seems that Rami got it. Apparently, she didn't know why she was trying so hard, and a happy Jin spoke. That is, this skill can make other pets stronger, which is why he was always ahead of other players. The little girl said that she didn't want to get stronger, but Jin had already moved on to the instructor, and he greeted him. The guy didn't recognize Jin at first, but only Jin called him by that nickname, so the guys remembered him. The guy then said that after he was isolated for an unknown reason, he never thought he would see Jin again. As Jin thought, Rami and the instructor remained the same as he raised them to be. The magician still couldn't believe that she was seeing Jin in real life. By the way, this was the first time Jin had heard Pocky speak. Summoned pet of the magic type D rank, witch Pocky, race, human X rank. Although she was a failure among the apprentice mages, an ancient fire dragon sleeps in her heart. What makes her a fighter is the real big fire damage in the area. The skill itself is nothing special. But what if the instructor awakens it? Paka's wave shoots out flames in the shape of a dragon, and every time a boss-class enemy is defeated with her wave, her damage is permanently increased. This skill, absorption, cannot be obtained without an instructor, so only Jin could properly use Pocky, of course. She could also speak. Pocky happily said that she missed Jin, which, of course, couldn't help but make Jin happy. Jin immediately warned the guys that they couldn't talk to him in front of strangers and that they shouldn't call him by his nickname. At first glance, it may seem that Jin's team is a bunch of losers. But with the right use of the guys, the team will become invincible. Luckily for Jin, he was quite the nerd. So after spending so much time in the game, he learned how to use the guys properly. And since the guys were alive, so to speak, they just sat in silence while the exhausted Jin slept. Finally, the instructor said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Pocky added that it really had been a long time. The instructor asked if he could just call her Rami, and Rami said yes, he was an instructor. They had only seen each other for a month. She was already here when he was called, so now she is his senior. The guy answered indifferently. It is true. And then his face suddenly changed. He said, "It's all unimportant. He wants to say only one thing. They're all too weak." It seems Jin wasn't joking about the instructor being obsessed with training. He shouted, in order to somehow help their master, they must become much stronger. So even when the master is sleeping, they must continue training. Pocky goes first. She should sit down and focus on her mana. When he wakes up, the first thing he will do is open absorption for her. Then the instructor's stern gaze moved to Rami, and the little girl even shuddered. She needs to increase the speed of her swings, so she will do strength training with him. Little Rami drooped. Then the instructor asked if she didn't want to be of use to their master. She will wave the frying pan. Since it is her first day, they will start small, just 5,000 swings. Poor Rami called for help, but Jin had no strength. Meanwhile, in the office, Cedric was informed that he could no longer issue scrolls. An official notification just arrived. It's the director's order. Cedric was worried. The director is always busy. So why does he suddenly care about such a trifle? And also, Cedric was ordered to write a detailed report about it. As he has used all the low-level summoning scrolls up to this point, it seems the deputy is behind it. Cedric said that this bastard is picking on his every move. Yuna sighed and said what they should do. She prepared a report. But if the administration doesn't give out the scrolls, they won't have anything to give Jin. And the time for the scrolls to be delivered is almost here. Cedric was worried because he really needed to curry favor with Jean, but his trump cards had just been taken away from him, and then Jean himself wrote to him. Then Cedric read the message. Yuna noticed Cedric's nervous look and asked what was wrong. Cedric said he wouldn't need low-level summoning scrolls anymore, of course, since Jin had found a mage and an instructor. And Cedric said that instead he needed to deal with that jerk MP Ian. Jin came to the mountain, Kendo province, he said cheerfully. So this is an ordinary dungeon. There are 4 types of dungeons in BP. The first is daily dungeons. They are needed to collect materials available on a certain day of the week. The second is the Tower of Trials, which is much more difficult than regular dungeons and forces players to push themselves to their limits. The rewards there are incredible, but the chance of dying is also high. Thirdly, the Demon Dragon of Chaos. This is a raid dungeon, which is why you need to assemble a group, but it was added to the game for Elena, so Jin will explain this later. Everything else is just regular dungeons, and that's exactly what Jin is heading to now. In BP, they were also called stage dungeons, but in reality, they appear randomly. You can form groups for them, but he doesn't need a group. Jin was already approaching the dungeon. There was already a guard standing there, and the entrance to the dungeon was closed, Jin thought. If the dungeon is not cleared in time, a dungeon breakout occurs. And the monsters are breaking out. He needs to clear it out quickly, the guard said. If he wants to enter the dungeon, he needs to check his license. Jin handed over the card. The man looked at him. Then he said, "Okay, Mr. Jin passed the test, but still asks the player to be more careful." Jin just nodded in response and finally entered the dungeon. A new level began. As soon as Jin entered the dungeon, thunder was heard, and the storm was everywhere. And that's not all. This is what the enslaved dungeon looks like. There were battles everywhere. It felt like hell, but Jin called it a simple, easy dungeon with knights and monsters. The knights in the castle were shouting, "The orcs are climbing up, we need to attack them." One of them ordered to pour boiling water on them. It really did feel like hell. When Jin was playing BP, everything seemed unreal. But now, it's difficult to watch this battle live. You see these terrible monsters. You see how people die. This is a real war. Gina didn't particularly like being in this bacchanalia, but he needs to pull himself together. Just do what he always does. He created a shield and called every helper. The team had come together, and now Jin's team looked strong, and it turned out he had a new addition. Golden Fairy D rank and Mini Kong also D rank. Better tanks and healers of D rank cannot be found. As you may have guessed, the poor gorilla was removed, and in order to summon this Mini Kong, Jin ordered Rami to buff the instructor's attack speed. As Dragon prepared to cover him with fire from behind, Pocky immediately called down fire. And finally, Jin sent Mini Kong straight to the orc boss, Kong jumping straight into the thick of things. The orc dungeon clearing scheme is quite simple. You just need to defeat the giant orc at the end. And that was it. Kong was already standing in front of the boss. A huge orc attacked him. But Mini Kong wasn't alone. Rami and the instructor finally entered the game. Rami gave the instructor some strength, and the guy killed several monsters at once, without even stopping once or letting go of his sword. Jin was impressed. He thought maybe it was because of the X rank. It was on a completely different level compared to the base form. In any case, getting through this dungeon would be easier than he thought. The knights watched them and said, "They are for them, and they are incredibly strong." They even cried from happiness, because they would be able to survive. The battle continued. Rami felt confident and began to tease the monsters, who began throwing axes at her. And this almost got Jin hurt, so he yelled at Rami not to fool around. And the witch finally gathered her mana and finished her spell. Now she can attack. Jin wasn't lying. Her Pocky Wave skill turned into a fire dragon. Paka's wave was very effective. The monsters were literally drowning in fire. And when the boss of this dungeon was distracted by this, the instructor took advantage of this and killed him. The boys cleared the dungeon. Little Rami screamed joyfully. And Paka's level and her level increased to 5 and by 2. The instructor level has also increased to 5, and the critical hit chance has increased by 1%. Rewards received: Medium Summon Scroll Jackpot. Medium Summon Scroll cost 500,001. So Jin decided that he needed to find the next dungeon quickly. He can simultaneously level up his pets and earn money. It's time to turn his life into an endless grind. It's great when your team does all the work for you, but Cedric's situation wasn't going well. Yuna asked, seriously, where did Cedric get so much confidence to make such bets? Cedric said wearily. But the bastard started it himself. Let's go back a little to the meeting. It's clear from his appearance that this guy is the same Ian, he said. He just gave advice because it seems to him. That Mr. Chairman is wasting the budget. How dare Cedric even call himself a talent development team? If they can't produce a single decent new player, none of these talents will ever make it to the national team. Is Cedric really that upset about a new record in the test dungeon? About such nonsense? Cedric could hardly contain himself. He hated this Ian. He would gladly say everything. What do you think of this jerk? But the players he supervises make it into the national team every year. He may be an arrogant jerk, but his skills are something to be reckoned with. And yet, Cedric isn't going to take it anymore. Cedric said Ian would tell him if a talent he was mentoring made it into the national team. Ian asked if he wanted to bet there were only 10 spots on the national team. Then they will argue about whose talent will rise higher. Cedric replied, "Shake hands." The loser publicly admits that his opponent is superior and resigns. And the penalty for resigning is 1 billion won. Yuna was now scolding Cedric. She said they only did this because she believed in Jin. He is of course incredible, but he is a simple gamer, inferior to registered players on all fronts. Cedric replied that he knew, but he believed in Jin. He was sure that if he gave him the proper support, he would. Jin will get a lot of valuable information for them. The door opened sharply and Ben shouted at Cedric. Cedric asked anxiously what happened. Ben said the chairman asked him to check on the player, who has recently been single-handedly clearing dozens of D-rank dungeons. So, this was their genie, something neither Cedric nor Yuna expected. Yuna said that a player who registered just a month ago clears D-rank dungeons in less than 5 minutes. As she was saying this, Cedric began to laugh evilly and then said, he also said that Jean is just the bomb and their ticket to the national team. The bearded man was so happy thinking like this, he knew that he could trust Jin. He knew it. His eyes did not deceive him. While Cedric was rejoicing at his future success in the office, Jin successfully completed another dungeon. In his room, Jin couldn't stop staring at his phone. He was very happy with the numbers in his account. He had earned a whole 16 million won. For 4 days, Jin went through 160 D-rank dungeons like crazy, his kids working hard. And Jin earned all this money from selling every medium summon scroll he got in those dungeons. His blood, sweat, and tears. Here our hero lied quite a bit, because it was his pets who were toiling in the sweat of their brows, and he was simply glancing at them from afar. Finally, his time had come, Jin thought. He decided that the bills needed to be split. This account is for everyday expenses, rent, utilities, food, and everything else. A little later, Jin will create a family account. This one is a savings account. He will put aside 10 million won a month for himself. Repeating the words 10 million, Jin giggled with joy as if he were in a dream. And finally, the player's account. Jin is going to spend all this money on his pets. Money is money, but the most important thing now is his value as a player. Jin knows exactly how to succeed in this game. All pets have already exceeded level 30 by completing dungeons, so it's time to collect runes and strengthen them. To do this, you need to farm daily dungeons. To quickly complete daily dungeons, Jin needs a main pet. So Jin decided to take a look at the market to see if there was anything interesting there, and when he opened the market, Jin screamed. C ranks cost an average of 20 million, which is too expensive. B ranks cost an average of 200 million, and there are no ads for A ranks or C ranks for sale at all. Although no one can even use them now, it is not surprising. Now money has acquired a new meaning for people, which means that Jin is still the same poor man he was before all this. Sighing, Jin said, "It probably makes sense, since even with high-level scrolls, the chance of getting rank B is only 1%, but okay." That's why Jin had made sure in advance that there was someone he could rely on. The door swung open and the guy shouted out to the chairman. Satisfied, Cedric read the documents and calmly asked what happened. And then the guy said, "A new request came from the player Jin." Then Cedric suddenly jumped up and shouted what was there. What did he ask for? A new request and an approaching new achievement. Cedric was like a puppy waiting for an order from his master. The guy was also scared by such a strange reaction. Instead of answering, the guy simply showed the correspondence with Jin, in which Jin wrote a whole list of what he needed, a list of pet purchases. The list made Cedric's eyes pop out of his head. The guy explained that Jin wanted them to buy all this for him. Now that Cedric's joy was diminished, if the headquarters could buy all this, Cedric wouldn't be using C-rank pets now, he asked dejectedly if they bought all of this. What would Jin tell them? The guy told, Jin said that he would reveal the secret method for clearing daily dungeons. Cedric asked, not only for the Monday or Wednesday dungeon, and in general for all daily dungeons, the guy answered. Yes, then Cedric thought again. Jean will tell them everything. This is very generous. So after thinking for a bit, he said, okay, he will talk to the director? Cedric looked confident. But just a few hours later, still without any confidence, he was banging on the table in irritation, shouting, old fart, stupid old man. That's why their country is always in last place. How many emotions the bearded man experienced, and it was only the middle of the day. Ben asked what was wrong with him. Yuna answered that he was refused. In general, asking something like that was already too much, while Cedric was screaming, she thought. If only all the chairmen had the same zeal, Ben asked. And what did the director say? Cedric answered. Said to bring evidence, or show a recording of the walkthrough and then ask, which is quite logical. But Cedric screamed how Jin was supposed to complete it without pets. Yuna was still wondering if his information was true. They would hit the jackpot, and the emotional Cedric continued to scream. Absolute jackpot. And those idiots at headquarters don't understand that, Yuna said, rather offensively, and Cedric immediately fell silent. Yuna added, isn't it offensive to sell such potential to the headquarters for just $1.5 billion? Cedric asked what she meant. Yuna suddenly asked if she could handle it instead of the chairman. The guys, of course, were shocked. They didn't expect this. However, if you think about it, it makes sense, Cedric thought. And that's why. Our Yuna is from the family that owns the Daisang Group and is the fourth granddaughter of the head of Daisang, South Korea's leading conglomerate. In short, our Yuna is quite the rich girl. She received an elite education as befits the heiress of Daesan, which means she can handle management just fine. But she chose to be a player rather than manage the company. And the player she's been most interested in lately is, of course, our weird guy. It's all because Jin knows too much, is suspicious, and is also a rude person who managed to make a deal with the government. Yes, what if they create a management team specifically for him, invest in his development, and in return receive a profit? Their approach will be fundamentally different from the approach of managers. Yuna is an excellent businesswoman. Cedric asked if Yuna was sure because the amount is not small. Yuna asked if Cedric was worried about her finances, which was funny because, remember, Yuna is rich. But to avoid any questions, Yuna said there was no need to worry about money, but first she needed to meet with Jin again. And already the next day, Yuna was already waiting for Jin in the cafe. Now the negotiations would begin. Finally, Jin arrived. The man wished Jin a good time. Jin thanked him. Then I thought, he is surprisingly generous. Unexpectedly, just think. They moved so quickly just because of one piece of information. It seemed like it was hard for her to refuse. Thanks to them, he is now in this elite restaurant that would put even five-star hotels to shame. It's a reception that Jin doesn't even know what to do with, but it definitely motivates him to keep supplying information. It was obvious at every corner how rich Yuna and her family were, Yuna asked. Jin finally came. Then Jin thought. He looked at the information about Yuna in advance, and I almost fainted. Appearance, family, genius, abilities, Jin never thought about it. With someone from the third generation of Chibols to work at the headquarters, Yuna thanked Jin for coming. Jin asked if she was alone. Yuna answered, yes, today she would be talking to him, not the headquarters. A little later, the guys sat down at the table. Yuna explained the situation, so unfortunately, it was difficult for the headquarters to provide further support. Chairman Cedric was for it, but there were many who were against it, Jean said. If the headquarters was against it, nothing could be done. And he thought that he himself could become number one. He would simply stop supplying them with information. But then Yuna added, instead, she has a proposal for Jin. She's going to start a management company. For him alone, Jin thought. A one-man management company was a pretty good deal. Unlike the headquarters, which is forced to act cautiously, the corporation moves solely for profit. And he is the one who will definitely be able to bring this profit. Moreover, most of all, he needs to create a connection with someone who has enough resources. Squeezing everything out and buying his information at the highest price sounds bad, but Yuna said she was with Daesan's professional support. Ready to give him full support in everything, Jin then thought if there was a better place than Daesan, after all, money doesn't lie. Jin said they've only met a few times, but she seems like a really nice person, a naive guy. Yuna said that for a talent like him, it's only natural. Then she will explain the details along with the contract. If it's convenient for him, she will send it tomorrow. He should also check the pets that Jin ordered, Jin asked. Already, he hasn't even signed the contract yet, Yuna answered. They prepared them regardless of his signing the contract. Let him consider it a gift. But she is a child of capitalism. There are no gifts in this world. Tired, Ginny said. Her brother is here today too. What was he doing that he didn't even call? It seemed like he even had his own place. At that moment, Yuna walked by, and Ginny looked at her and froze. She thought about how beautiful Yuna was. But finally, Ginny realized that she had seen this face on Instagram before, and she began scrolling through her memory. After thinking for a bit, Ginny remembered Yuna. Of course, Ginny knows who she is, so her shock was quite justified. Yuna didn't notice anything and continued walking towards Jin. Meanwhile, Jin and his pets were busy training. The instructor mercilessly yelled at the guys, More, they will only get stronger." If they were to give it their all, it seemed like even Jin was scared to start training. Suddenly, the instructor noticed something and whispered to the guys, "That's it, silence, someone is coming, talking is prohibited." The boys nodded silently. It was the perfect moment to take a break, and little Rami wasn't ready to miss it. Tired Yuna finally climbed the mountain. Jin and the guys came up and Yuna asked if Jin had been training since the morning. Jin replied, "Yes, just a light warm-up," Yuna said. "His team is here too. How great they are. She is seeing some of them for the first time." As expected from a cruel instructor, he did not allow the guys to rest, grabbed everyone and dragged them to training. Jin said this is his main squad. He will officially introduce them later, Yuna said. Well then, first she will give him a gift. A system window will appear, and Yuna's player will offer him an exchange. Jin is asked to carefully review the player's offer and supports exchanges between players as in other games. People in chats offer to exchange their pet for another, or may even add a few coins. If you deceive someone and run away, you can literally die from the curse of the system window. The game is fair and does not tolerate liars. Yuna actually managed to find all the pets that Jin had listed. She is a real professional. Jin accepted the deal. Then Jin thanked Yuna. "It was really a valuable gift," Yuna replied. "It was nothing." And then she took the contract out of her bag and asked if Jin was ready to get started. The name of the management company is U Peak. It is made up of their last names. 70% of the shares will go to Jin, 25% to Yoon, and 5% to Chairman Cedric. The chairman will remain at headquarters to continue to help them from within. Yuna also plans to hire Ben and Ten as employees, Jin said, but they are from headquarters. Yuna replied, "They quit this morning. She told them that she would triple their current salary." Jin read the contract and asked. He was grateful, of course, but 70%. She was sure that it suited her. Yuna replied that this was her way of placing a bet. She would take a solid 25%, and in exchange, she would have the opportunity to increase the value of those 25%, Yuna thought. Besides, voting rights weren't that important in a company for one person. The most important thing is her relationship with Jin. Now is the time to put aside greed and strengthen their connection. This is her main task. Jin put the seal. "Now the contract is concluded," Jin said. "Then it is in the hands of the headmistress Yuna." And Yuna replied, "It's finished." While the boys were talking, the instructor noticed movement in the bushes and immediately flew in there. Yuna was just about to ask what he was doing, when suddenly they heard screams and creaking sounds. A minute later, the instructor came out, grabbing Ginny and her dark elf. The instructor has the auto-hunt skill, so he doesn't hesitate in such cases. It seemed like Jin had a lot of explaining to do to his sister. Jin asked in confusion what Ginny was doing here. A little later, when Yuna had already left, Jin decided to talk to his sister. As it turned out, Ginny recognized Yuna and decided to follow her, so she overheard their conversation, which Jin didn't like at all, but Jinna said that she was just curious, so she came. She didn't follow. However, Jin insisted, this is what is called tracking, to which Ginny could not answer anything. It got worse. She was given a status effect, a truth bomb, and then Jin asked, "And when I came here, I saw him and decided to secretly watch." Ginny shouted, "Yes, that's right." "There is no way that brother could be acquainted with Yuna," Ginny screamed. She was very excited. She couldn't believe what she saw, so she continued screaming about what her brother had done and how he had ended up next to her. Then Jin thought that it was all a bit too confusing. There was a clause about family in the contract, so they would have met sooner or later anyway. Yuna said she was just about to meet his family, so it all worked out quite well. Ginny was delighted that Yuna herself wanted to meet her. But not now, and just like that, Yuna left, leaving Ginny to cry in front of her brother, so Jin decided to explain everything. Ginny said that her brother used to be quite a famous gamer, and recently broke the record in a low-level dungeon. "So I returned to headquarters and met Yuna." Jin replied, yes, he was probably unhappy that his sister found out about everything so early. Although Jin didn't reveal all his cards, Ginny thought for a moment and asked, "But didn't brother play some mobile game for a long time before that?" Jin shuddered. Then he lied. No, it's a completely different game. He played BP for about a year, so Ginny still doesn't know that he is the very popular player that everyone is looking for. But it was enough to impress Ginny. She said that even a year is a long time for such a crappy game. Which was true, so Jean kept quiet, and Ginny asked, so his nerdiness finally paid off. Ginny seemed to find this amusing, and Jean thought it wasn't that he didn't trust his sister. There's just always that slim chance. The family that took care of him for those 3 years while he was in a coma. Jin simply can't mindlessly drag them into danger. He first needs to become strong enough to protect them. Only then will he be able to reveal his identity, Ginny asked. But why is he telling her this only now? Jin replied. He was going to tell everything, and it wasn't like he was hiding it. He would explain everything to his parents too. So let him keep it a secret for now, Jin asked. But why? Jin answered. There are reasons for that. While the brother and sister were talking, the instructor continued to torment the team with training. And he didn't stop with his team. His hands reached the dark elf Ginny, Jin said. About that dark elf. If he's going to level her up, let him summon a shadow wolf and use them together. Without him, she won't even get 10% of her effectiveness. Ginny asked. Shadow wolf, is there such a pet? Jin answered. Most likely, she doesn't know about it. After all, he is a B rank. Then Ginny asked with displeasure. And how could she even get a B rank? After browsing the internet a bit, Ginny asked if her brother was offering her to buy this one, but it would take 20 years. He costs 500 million won, but Jin laughed and said, let him wait. Jin promised to get his sister such a pet in just 1 month, of course. Ginny didn't believe him. She didn't yet know that Jin had a patron, she asked. Became a player and now goes out of her way to seem cool. Ginny told her brother not to worry about it. She would save up and buy the wolf herself. But Jin warned her not to burst into tears of happiness when she received the shadow wolf. Jin told his people that they had enough training for today, and the instructor finally managed to get the elf Ginny to train. It seemed like he didn't care who he trained, but Ginny thought something was wrong. Her brother had become somehow different. The poor elf. A week later, Jin came to the dungeon, but this time he was not alone, but with Yuna, Ten, and Ben. And the guys brought something. Jin asked what it was. Yuna answered, this is the equipment that Jin will wear in the dungeons. The main activity of the company you pack is information. Jin asked what this means. Of course, there is a video walkthrough of all D-rank dungeons, only for paid subscribers. They're going to sell the videos of their walkthroughs for big money, and that requires this advanced equipment. On the one hand, it was a good idea because you could make money, but on the other hand, Jin didn't want to be famous. And the camera will record everything around in 3D. This suit is extremely flexible and lightweight, so it won't be uncomfortable. The guys even went a bit overboard. This performance is even more intense than the filming. Jin said it was his first time doing Monday's dungeon, and he wasn't sure he could clear it easily. Is it okay? Jin asked. Yuna answered. Yes, they will just edit the best moments anyway. Looks like Jin will have to pretend to be ignorant since he's being filmed now, Jin said to Yuna before going in. It's okay if he breaks the national record right after entering? Yuna shuddered a little and said yes. And then I thought, he just said that he's not sure he can get through it quickly? It's a joke, right? Yes, maybe the contract for $500 million is putting too much pressure on him. So she said, don't worry, everything is fine. Let him play calmly, like in the old gaming days. Jin thought the national record for Monday's dungeon was about 7 minutes, which meant he should be able to beat it pretty easily. He entered the dungeon and saw a deserted valley, another battlefield, Monday's dungeon. The only dungeon with special rules, where the time taken to complete it directly affects your rating. As in most games, attack power runes are extremely important in P, because without them it will be extremely difficult. It's not for nothing that they are called universal. This is a defensive dungeon, usually requiring 30 minutes of fighting off waves of undead. But the time it takes to complete the game still matters, and Korea isn't even in the rankings right now. Even though this dungeon is called a defensive dungeon, if you defeat the final boss, the Lich, everything will end instantly. Therefore, the standard tactic is to go straight to the boss. Jin already has a plan, and the equipment is working fine. This means you can start the battle. The system suggested creating 3 squads, but the player can only create up to 3 squads. Jin was confident in his abilities, because he had already set them up for PvE, PvP, and daily dungeons. First, Jin called the instructor as well as the battle sheriff, who was a C rank, and with them, of course, Kong, also a C rank. They are like a squad for battles. The second squad was a little calmer. It included a C-rank priestess and a D-rank golden fairy. A system window appeared, warning Gina that the evil Lich's undead legion was rising. Jin was offered to simply hold back all the evil until help arrived. The countdown began. In the very first second, the Lich sent his skeletons into battle. But Kong is not one to be scared. He began to drum on his chest as a sign of strength. As expected, Kong simply grabbed the undead and turned their skulls into sand. Then Jin told his team to attack the boss. While Kong was attacking the small fry, the undead, Jin ordered the main team to attack the Lich, who was flying menacingly above the ground. Jin said that first we need to climb to the hill. The instructor listened to him and nodded in response, which was quite expected. As soon as they found themselves in the dungeon, the instructor bit his tongue during the mission. And all because the instructor understood perfectly well that they were being recorded by a camera, so he was not allowed to talk. The guys got here in 2 minutes, with small mobs following them. The team is coping easily, Jin, I remember, said that the instructor is not particularly strong in combat. It seems he should apologize. After all, the instructor shows himself from the best side, especially Kong, who screamingly destroys all the monsters, simply throwing their own skulls at them. The sight of Kong throwing skulls, killing everyone in his path, made Jin think that Kong and the instructor were doing a great job. How glad he is that they are for him and not against him. And now they are at the same height as the Lich. Then Jin told the battle sheriff to get ready. The battle sheriff had a long range and excellent accuracy, but the damage is so pathetic that almost no one uses this character. The sheriff can shoot directly at the target, and even then the monster won't get a scratch. Players asked. The sheriff turned on auto battle for 32 hours and didn't even notice. But in a low-level Monday dungeon, they're a real lifesaver because the Lich doesn't have much health. Jin's vast experience has once again helped him out. He knows exactly where to place such losers so that they can show their best side. Also, Jin knows how to form pairs to strengthen forces. Jin asked the sheriff not to shoot yet, and he asked the priestess to use the Radiance and Blessing. The effect of the Blessing is very simple. It removes the Dark Shield from Lith, a skill that gives immunity to ranged attacks. As soon as the priestess finished praying, Jin said to the sheriff, "Now it's possible." And the sheriff's mad gaze froze on the face. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the instructor became a real star, cutting down skeletons one after another. He looked very scary, and the strong Kong kept up with the instructor, turning the skeletons into a handful of sand. These two protected Jin and the others from the undead so that they could quickly kill the Lich. But the poor guys got it too. But as soon as the monsters injured Kong and the instructor, the Golden Fairy and the priestess immediately healed them. Despite the menacing and even frightening appearance of the battle sheriff, the bullets flew off the Lich as if he had been bitten by a mosquito. Jin wasn't kidding about the damage, and indeed the sheriff's damage looks pathetic compared to the others, although his health is definitely depleting little by little. Normally, due to weak runes and low levels, this would take a long time, but Jin's team has already been fighting for about 4 minutes. That's why everyone considers it useless and rarely uses it. However, this only applies to ordinary players. One of the monsters got out and attacked Jin. Kong, of course, noticed this, but a bunch of monsters pounced on him, holding him down, and even so, there was no sign of excitement on Jin's face, and the monster was unable to get closer to Jin. Of course, Jin wasn't worried, because he had an instructor, Hank, who was as loyal and strong as always. It is Hank who will help Jin become the first in this game. Hank's unique ability helps to unlock the potential of each of Jin's pets. And if you choose the right runes and skills, even a top-tier Lich will vanish in one bullet. Despite the battle sheriff's weak strength, this Lich was defeated after yet another blow. That's how Jin completed Monday's dungeons, of course. He broke the South Korean record, which was easy, and received a special achievement. Ten said he couldn't believe Jin had actually managed to break the Monday dungeon record. But Yuna said it was all somehow strange. It had only been a week since she had given him these pets. Even if he hadn't broken the record, she would still have supported him. Ben agreed and asked if Jin was really going to break all the records in the daily dungeons. He's saying that of course it's cool that Jin broke the record in Tuesday's dungeon, but Jin never explained it. How are the others going to proceed? No, of course Korea has had a lot of experienced players over the course of a year, but what if Jin is just bluffing? Of course, Ben's suspicions are justified. Anyone would suspect something was wrong if a guy showed up who was breaking one record after another. Yuna asked if Ben was worried. She opened this business with her own money, even if what Ben fears happens. She will make sure that this does not affect their careers in any way, and their salary will not change in any way. It seems the boys have truly tasted the joys of life in a matriarchy, delighted that they are working for Yuna. Of course, everything is much simpler. Yuna didn't just say all this for no reason. Firstly, she was confident in her decision. Secondly, she can afford it because she has a lot of money, but what worried her more? So that's what she understood. Jin was clearly hiding something, otherwise he wouldn't be so confident. He acted as if the dungeons were nothing to him. and Yuna was very curious to know what he was hiding. Meanwhile, headquarters quickly learned about the broken record, and of course, they were delighted. They screamed. Monday's dungeons were completed in 4 minutes and 12 seconds, 3 minutes faster than the previous record. It seemed that Yuna was now convinced that she had found a gold mine. She thought that this business would definitely be successful. And if everything goes as planned, she will hit the jackpot even bigger. Jin has finished the task and is ready to leave the dungeon. But before he leaves, he needs to do something. He opened the system window. It was time to farm. In BP, there is an option to enable auto battle after completing the daily dungeon for the first time. In other words, his pets farm everything themselves, and Jin gets a ton of treasure from this. Jin removed the instructor and called Rami and said, "Rami is in charge of farming the Monday dungeon." Rami asked in surprise. Instead of the instructor, Jin laughingly replied, "The instructor should train the others." "What, he wants to train too?" Rami froze. Memories of training with Hank flashed through her head. All the life left her body, and then she asked Jin to let her farm. Just this. Jin decided to clear the rest of the daily dungeons at the same time, and then turn on auto battle to collect the rewards. And train the rest of the pets? A perfectly effective scheme, not a second will be wasted. As soon as Jin gave everyone their assignments, he said goodbye to the guys, saying that he was counting on Rami. Jin left. Rami replied, "Jin can rely on her." Jin finally came out of the dungeon and froze. And all because Gina started getting licked from all sides again, even the red carpet was covered. It was a bit awkward. Jin said that all the videos were saved here and returned the jacket, and then asked, "They don't need anything else," Yuna replied. "Of course no. She will make sure that this video doesn't leak anywhere. So Jin doesn't have to worry about the news." Jin surprised her by saying that he doesn't mind if the news about the record spreads this time. He needs her to take care of his family's safety, as gangs are still active in Korea. And for Yu Baek, Jin is incredibly valuable, so they will definitely provide much stricter security, so Jin did not mind the news. Now his family has a roof over their heads and they don't have to worry about their safety. Yuna replied. She understood. She would protect them even if it meant using Disan's powers, Yuna promised. While Rami and the others continued to fight in the Monday dungeon, Jin came with the other pets to another dungeon, which Jin had already completed in 3 minutes, using only a Komodo lizard because he was recording. And yet, his performance could easily take a place in the world rankings if he gives the spotted Komodo runes for movement speed. And if the Wind Falcon's full potential is unleashed to increase its speed, then breaking the record will be a breeze if the kids are well trained. It will be possible to fit it into 1 minute, and this concludes the recording of Tuesday's dungeon. Jin entered the next dungeon. Wednesday, this dungeon, where runes of protection are obtained, has one peculiarity. Namely, it is incredibly cold here, and therefore movement speed is greatly reduced. Jin summoned an ice cat and a wind falcon, C and B rank, and Jin also summoned a titanium golem B rank. He has another fairy, a C rank horned fairy, and since it's cold here, he summoned Pocky. You can't do without pets with cold resistance in this dungeon, and the best among them is the ice cat. And the rest will have to freeze for now, of course, unless Pocky turns on his abilities and warms everyone up. It didn't take more than a couple of minutes for the monsters in this dungeon to run and attack Jin. First, Jin uses the titanium golem. He strengthens its shield. Then the golem itself becomes larger. Then Jin called the Wind Falcon. With the speed boost from the Wind Falcon, Jin will be able to quickly get through everything. The golem kindly picked each of them up and placed them on his shoulders, and then rushed at the monsters. This is of course cool, but the poor guys are starting to feel sick. Victory awaits only those who can endure it. The monsters continued to throw huge snowballs, but now, compared to the golem's size, these boulders looked like ordinary snowballs. The Titan Golem is truly impressive and is perfect for a tank role, but that's not all. Jin gave the order and the golem jumped and grabbed the rock. Only a titanium golem could pass along this route. And because of its size, it saves a lot of time. Jin told Pocky to get ready. The guys simply ignored the monsters below because they were pawns and immediately reached the dungeon boss. The golem climbed the mountain and the system immediately announced the appearance of the boss. The monster growled. Of course, he had a shield. But Jin had foreseen this too. So he took with him a horned fairy, who easily removed the shield with just one wave of her hand, and it was as if the shield had never been there. Jin shouted to Pocky. Now it was the fire girl's turn. She began to collect mana. The fire flared up, which probably pleased Jin, who was freezing all this time. As expected, Polka's power created a huge fire dragon, thanks to the instructor who had been pushing her with training all this time. And just like that, Pocky was able to incinerate the dungeon monster, and Jin completed the dungeon in 4 minutes. Of course, this was another national record. Jin decided to see what he got for completing this dungeon. But his stomach decided it was time to show itself. Gina felt a little seasick, nothing serious. And then news came out about Jin's incredible dungeon runs, and from that moment on, Jin became very popular. All of South Korea started talking about him. Everyone was interested in who this Jin was, where he came from, and why so suddenly. Everyone was talking about Jin. News about him was everywhere. The new player Jin broke the records of daily dungeons. And now it was time for regrets for the director of staff. The assistant asked if it was not him that Chairman Cedric was talking about. The same one who promised information in exchange for the summoning scrolls, the director asked. The one that Chairman Ian objected to. The assistant said. Then Ian said he wouldn't give the money until he got the information first. The director sighed and said, "But it looks like that information was true." The assistant replied, "It looks like it." Then the director remembered their argument and what a wimp he had been. But at the time, what Chairman Ian had said seemed right. But in politics, only the result is always important. And now they occupy a confident first place. Now the director thought that if they had supported Jin back then, they would now have received not only public recognition, but also many more votes. It seemed that Ian had really lost his grip on the opportunity that was coming his way, and the director was disappointed. But it was too early to give up, the director decided. So he told the secretary to try to contact this player again. The secretary was surprised by such an order. He asked again whether the director should contact Jin directly. The director replied, yes, they thought that Jin was just a dud, but that was clearly not the case. They needed to get him at any cost. And while Cedric was rejoicing and shouting about his victory to Yuna on the phone, Jin was already in another dungeon. The Accomplice and Wednesday dungeons drop runes, and the Tuesday dungeon drops a reforging potion. And Thursday's dungeon contains skill books, although these books do not contain unique pet skills, or hidden skills that can only be obtained with the help of an instructor. Other useful skills drop there, so it's worth clearing it out. Since Rami didn't know about the camera, the instructor quickly covered her mouth, which upset little Rami. Now she's not allowed to talk even in the dungeon. In addition, due to this, you don't have to clear the Sunday dungeon. Both the Sunday dungeon and the Thursday dungeon drop skill books. And the Sunday dungeon didn't want to see Jin anymore, and the Thursday dungeon was much simpler. Jin hadn't even warmed up, so he suggested practicing. Rami, in Thor's form, didn't even mind, as it meant they didn't have to grind endlessly, so they decided to rest on Sundays. So why is Thursday's dungeon considered so easy? Because right when you enter, there is a boss. They call it a boss rush. This boss has incredibly high defense, so you need to use a B-rank White Wolf with a defense-reducing skill. Although Gene has a different plan, he has gathered his entire team, our usual guys. Of course, with the addition of a couple of newcomers, namely the Ice Falcon and our new favorite. After all, you can simply kill this boss if, of course, the DPS allows it. Jin also did not forget about his own safety. So many people died just because they didn't turn on their shields. You can't even put a video walkthrough like that up for sale. He'll literally steamroller monsters with his pumped-up pets. Today's recipe is a crispy fried earth golem. Jin can already imagine a flood of hate comments if he posts this video, so he'll just stick to his standard tactics. Cut down his defense with the White Wolf and then finish him off with burst damage. Good old standard tactic. It's not that Jin doesn't have any tips on how to beat the record. You just need to hit the golem's weak spot, its head, which has a cute flower on it. So Jin uses a titanium golem, 2 huge golems. The battle will be between these two. Of course, Jin won't fight just the golem. He summoned a mage and an instructor. He prompted them, saying that they should aim for the head, and the Titan attacked the golem, distracting its attention. And in just a couple of minutes, the instructor, like Levi, cut the golem's hand, and not once, but several times. And after these cuts, smoke appeared, and as we know, there is no smoke without fire. It's Arpaka's turn. The little one has already achieved incredible success in her skills. Her fire dragon simply destroyed the earth golem as Jin expected, and the boss was defeated quite quickly. Jin completed the dungeon. The time it took to complete it was 5 minutes, that's it. Jin beat the Korean record by a whole minute. The instructor is definitely MBA, but Jin still has no intention of using him to farm the final dungeon. After all, even one well-trained dragon mage is enough there. With her help, even top-tier dungeons can be completed in seconds. Taking into account the entrance and exit, Jin thinks the cleanup took about 10 seconds. So Jin decided it wouldn't hurt to go through this dungeon again after some time. Jin finally came out of the dungeon, and the guys were already waiting for him there. They turned to him, and they asked if he was by any chance a player named Jin. And when Jin answered yes, they took out their business card. Having said that they had come from headquarters on the director's orders, Jin asked clearly something had happened. Jin thought that the issue with the headquarters was already closed, but then they showed up, the guy said. They looked at his previous proposal, and since Jin has shown such results, they are ready to consider it. But Jin interrupted the guy and said that as for that offer, they could forget about it. Of course, the staff at such a top headquarters didn't expect a refusal. They were apparently used to the enthusiastic shouts. But Jin had already made up his mind, because Yuna had decided to trust him even before his popularity skyrocketed. They only say that they have considered his proposal, but it is all just a pretty wrapper. They are the complete opposite of Yuna. And that's why Jin got pouty and said he was already working with a company, and if they wanted to say anything, they could contact Yuna from UPEC. Jin didn't even listen to the guys until the end. He immediately said goodbye to them and left, and the guy asked UPEC again in surprise. Since he was new, he asked the senior what kind of company UPEC was, but the senior remained silent. That's why the guy said Jin was talking about Yuna, the one from Disan. The elder didn't answer his questions. He just said they would sort it out as soon as they got back. He felt uneasy because he felt it. As if they were missing something very important, and he wasn't wrong. Cedric continued to bombard Jin with strange messages, so Jin left the chat. Jin went out onto the roof. Friday's dungeon is different from the others, if in others. You could simply summon pets and order them to kill monsters. But here, you need to run through the dungeon yourself to complete it. Our hero isn't as athletic as he might seem, so Jin decided it was time for him to start training too. Jin summoned a B-rank heavenly liver. It was quite large and a beautiful heavenly color befitting its name. Then Jin looked down. The shield wouldn't let Jin die from the fall, but it was still scary. Despite his fear, Jin called Sky and told the little girl to fly to the Eastern Sea, a scene straight out of How to Train Your Dragon. At first, Jin couldn't open his eyes out of fear, but as soon as he did, he realized how cool it was. It turned out to be much more fun than Jin thought. He was happy like a little child and told Sky to fly forward. They quickly flew to the coast, where the instructor and Pocky were already waiting for him. This time, Hank would be tormenting his owner, not the pets. But Hank remains a loyal puppy, so he screamed. The speed of learning to fly is just amazing, as expected. Jean is great, Jean answered awkwardly. Not that much, but Hank insisted on his own. And then Pocky added, "It's true, even they had a hard time flying the wyverns at first. As we can see, Jin's main team suffered from the trip." Jean thought, come to think of it, Hank and Pocky once rode wyverns and dolphins in BP. Pocky continued to praise Jin, speaking as expected of the god Jin, their master. Then Jin thanked her. Discrimination. Poor little Hank was upset because Jean didn't thank him. Jin asked, in any case, next they have training on sky dolphins, right? Pocky answered that everything was correct, and then Jean said that since the guys had plenty of experience in this, he would count on them. The boys were happy that their master was relying on them, and so, a few days later, Jin entered the Friday dungeon. Jin summoned the Wind Falcon, and the system announced that the player's run would begin in 10 seconds. You need to get to your destination as quickly as possible, by the way. This is where Jin received the title of God of Cleansing. Jin asked the Falcon to give him a speed buff. The countdown ended, and Jin rushed forward. Of course, there were some obstacles after all. These are dungeons and not a school marathon, and rocks were flying at Jin at high speed. Jin managed to run easily, dodging the rocks. Another obstacle appeared on the way. Doing all this himself, Jin realized something. It's much more interesting than just controlling your character by clicking on the phone screen. Jin really enjoyed the game and did a great job of clearing the dungeon. Well, it's time to go to the first hidden route. Jin jumped into the sea at full speed. Jin flew and summoned a sky dolphin, and a baby dolphin immediately jumped out of the water. He picked up Jin, and they dove into the water together. Using the dolphin to swim underwater, Jin was able to avoid all the obstacles above. However, Jin didn't swim with the dolphin for very long. The dolphin jumped out of the water, and then Jin summoned a heavenly wyvern. Jin jumped off the dolphin's back and landed on the wyvern's back. It was time to fly a little. All that was left was to fly past the last obstacles, which did not cause Vivierna any difficulty. And ahead was the finish line. John and the baby quickly flew towards it. They managed to get through the dungeon without any particular difficulties. The system congratulated Jin on breaking the Korean record and presented him with a special achievement. After clearing Friday's dungeon, Jin went to Saturday's dungeon where he rode a dinosaur, the guy living someone's dream. All the monsters in this dungeon were destroyed. Jin cleared it in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And after this dungeon, Jin went to the Sunday dungeon, which was also cleared in an instant. Jin and the guys quickly defeated the Absolute Master and cleared the dungeon. Little Rami was a little tired and said it was hard. but the instructor said that their training had paid off. Jin praised the guys for their work, while the system congratulated him on breaking the South Korean national record. Finally, Jin caught up with the top guys. The cleanup time was 14 minutes, which was longer than the previous cleanups. If Jin continues to farm dungeons, the time it takes to clear them will become even shorter. He will simply farm once a day. Until he can start clearing medium dungeons, he will need to clear a high-level dungeon at least once and acquire runes and skills. And only then would Jin be able to at least look at the testing tower. Jin wondered if 2 pets would be enough for him. Leaving aside the high-level summoning scrolls, what was Jin supposed to do with all those rewards? Meanwhile, a pleasant atmosphere reigned in Yubayek's office. Yuna read the news about Jin and how everyone admired him, and thought that the whole world was going crazy about Jin right now. However, this is not surprising. Because Jin broke all records in just a week, Yuna called Ben and asked how the editing was going. Then Ben answered absent-mindedly. He had just finished it, but then Ten asked, "What, something was wrong?" Ben replied, "Not really. It's just that he could hardly believe his eyes while editing the video." Instead of explaining, Ben decided to just show them the video and said that at Jin's request, he didn't include the Thursday and Sunday dungeons in the video. The guys started watching the video. Now they understand what Ben was talking about. He sees such a picture in reality. It's very strange. Ben said Jin's strategy and the way he executes it is on a whole other level, like some kind of digital performance. Now Yuna couldn't believe her eyes either. Ten said that you don't always see things like this even in the movies. Ben said he felt like even if they sold it, there would only be a handful of players who could replicate it, which is why he was hesitant about the video. Yuna thought this just proved how skilled Jin was in this game. Then she said, "First of all, before selling the video, we need to buy all the pets mentioned in it," Ben said. She wants to occupy the market in advance. Yuna answered, "Exactly. You need to squeeze the maximum out of the information received," Ben answered. He understood. He will buy as much as the budget allows. But Yuna said, "No, there's no need to pay attention to the budget. Let him buy everyone up. She'll solve everything if finances become scarce. It's good to be rich." After some time, Yuna was sitting contentedly in her office. As one can understand, the deal was successful. As soon as she arrived at the bank, everyone immediately started to stir. Of course, they tried to suck up to Yuna as best they could. They guaranteed that she would have the maximum limit possible, promised to help with anything. In short, Yuna sorted out the finances and bought all the pets. Now it's time to sell the saw. She also wrote an ad about selling guides for completing all the daily dungeons. Ben asked if it was really worth selling them at such a low price. Yuna replied that these guides were just bait to sell the pets. Moreover, this will contribute to the development of South Korean players. Ten called the chairwoman and asked what price to set for pets. Yuna replied with a grin, "Let him sell the C-rank ones for 200 million and the B-rank ones for 1 billion. Ten said, "But it's 10 times the market price. Isn't it too expensive?" However, Yuna insisted that the price of these particular pets would skyrocket. And since they had most of these pets, and they will have to buy them even if the price is too high, now it's time to get a reward for the investment made in Genie. After some time, the guys looked at the numbers in their score in shock. Even Yuna hadn't expected such success, let alone the guys, and they hadn't really even started yet. This is a colossal success. Jin's influence is too great. The pets that Yuna bought for Jin cost 500 million won. To think that everything turned out exactly like this, even Yuna, who was used to huge numbers, needed a little time to calm down. Yuna said that their business has finally taken off. It's time to start with small investments, and right now. The guys didn't understand what she was talking about, so Yuna said that first of all, they should buy a building. Jin also beamed with joy when he looked at his bank account. Jin had earned 54 million won, and in just a week. Right high-level summoning scrolls. Rami was also happy, because now Jin can buy her a bunch of buns. Jin said that the rewards from the dungeons were just a fairy tale. Rami asked, and EX rank pets still didn't drop. Then Jin's joy evaporated in an instant. Memories of how they spent whole days tormenting themselves, tearing up scrolls and getting nothing but garbage, flashed through both of their minds. 10,000 summoning scrolls didn't yield any, and besides, it's better to train existing pets now, rather than trying to get something worthwhile, and Jun also needs to sell all the junk he managed to farm. Then Jin thought, maybe he should ask Jinny for help since she makes money by selling runes. Since items for sale will continue to drop, why not assign it to Jinny so he can share the profits with her? Besides, Jin heard that it was Jinna who paid part of his expenses when he was unconscious in the hospital. So, as an older brother, Jin decided it was time to repay her. He wrote to her and asked her to come to the appointed place whenever he could. The girls were chatting in a cafe, they were talking about their boyfriends, their pets, and so on. Ginny was with them. It seems they were her friends. The girl said that her boyfriend would soon get a pet brang. Despite the conversations, Ginny wasn't listening to anyone. She seemed to be thinking about something serious. When she sighed, her friend noticed it and asked what was wrong. Ginny didn't look well. Then Ginny came back to reality and mumbled that she had just thought of it for a second, but her friend didn't believe her. And she said that if something was bothering Ginny, she should just tell them. It would make her feel better if she spoke out. Ginny was very touched, but her brother is the very player everyone is talking about now. And this needs to be kept a secret. How can she tell them that her brother has already opened a company selling information? He probably has his reasons for hiding everything, but it's still very annoying. After all, every time her worried parents ask her what her brother is doing now, they haven't heard anything about him for a long time. She has to hide all the information, all his successes. She lied that she didn't know anything. And of course, it was very difficult. She can't even hint to her mom and dad about it, let alone her friends. And that's when a message from her brother arrived. When Ginny read it, she thought he wanted to tell her something, that she would finally be able to free herself from this secret. And in her joy, Ginny jumped up from her seat. Of course, such an opportunity could not be missed. She apologized and said that she thought it was time to go. Of course, the girls were surprised at how Ginny suddenly left, Ginny's friend said. They were going to have dinner together today, but Ginny said, "Her brother called her? The girls asked if he was the one who had just come out of the coma. Was he okay?" Ginny finally shouted out, yes, he would tell her everything later. Having promised to treat the girls next time, Ginny ran away, and when she came to meet her brother, she froze in place. And all because she caught the training that the instructor was conducting. Each of Jin's pets was training diligently. Ginny noticed the instructor she had disliked because of the last time he had tortured her shadow elf. Hank noticed her too, since Ginny was here. That meant the training had to be done silently. At that moment, Jean called out to Ginny, who turned around to ask what was going on. But she couldn't ask, because a very strange picture appeared before her. Her nerd brother, who was always like a board and couldn't even pick up a phone, became a muscle man. Ginny wondered what that meant. Had he always had a body like that? He had just come from the hospital where he had been on an IV. Jean asked what she wanted to ask. Then Jeannie pointed to this mess and asked what it meant, where these pets were from. Of course, Jin didn't understand her confusion, so he asked what was wrong with them, and Ginny responded with a slightly irritated expression. Their market price has recently skyrocketed, with C ranks costing 200 million and B ranks costing 1 billion, and they are very difficult to obtain, and there aren't many left. But then she wondered where he got such rare pets from. They say they were the same kind that Yu Peck sold. And then it dawned on her, of course, she didn't know that Yuna had sold them out when she realized that because of the video, these pets would become popular. But now she understood who was behind this company, and yet she couldn't believe it. So I asked if it was my brother with these pets who broke the daily dungeon record. Jin calmly replied, yes. Ginny asked where he got them all from and why he was so calm. Then Jin asked, she remembers Yuna. Ginny is like a real fan. With shining eyes, she answered, of course she remembers, Jin said. She gave them to him, and Ginny's sharply shining eyes disappeared. She shouted, gave it to me. Just like that, they are damn expensive, even before the hype. Don't they belong to the company? Jin answered calmly again. Yes, Yuna said it was a gift. Ginny couldn't believe what she heard. She muttered to herself how much they cost. And what kind of relationship do they have if she gives him such gifts, Jin said. In any case, she came quickly. Finally, Ginny pulled herself together and asked, exactly, why did he call her? Jin asked if she was still selling runes. Ginny answered, yes, she just sold something yesterday, but what? Jin took out all his stuff and said, these are rewards for completing dungeons. Maybe Ginny should take a look. Ginny replied that it was a speed rune, but it had few stats. This cleavage rune had a critical chance. This rarely happens. It can be sold for a very high price. Ginny was looking at the runes with interest, and Jin, watching her, was thinking, Ginny sells runes every day, so she knows so much and has a pretty good eye. She even remembers the effects of low drop rate runes and the value of skill books. And she also instantly identifies materials, and she also immediately recognized his pets. She probably never leaves the market. Ginny was completely carried away. Jean tore her away, calling her. He said that he would give it all to her, and he asked if she would try to sell them. Ginny asked if Jin wanted her to do that. Jin nodded, and then Ginny wondered if she was sure she could sell them for a good price. At least no worse than others. Ginny is already well known in the markets. She has already demonstrated her business acumen more than once. Even as a child, in all her games, trading was always more interesting to Ginny than any hunting. But if you sell all of this, you won't need to farm runes anymore, although Ginny thought maybe it would be better to just focus on sales. She only started farming because she needed things to sell. She really likes selling, and Jin knew it. But there was something that was bothering her. So Ginny asked a little awkwardly what percentage she would get from the sales. She also needs to think about the future. A couple of times she can do everything for free, but not all the time, Ginny thought. Then Jean asked how much she wanted. Ginny replied that large wholesalers usually take it, from very much to 10%. But since it's a brother, Ginny raised her hand and said she will take only 5%, and asked Jin how this was. Then Jin nodded, and he asked what it meant, 5% between them. Ginny shuddered. It seemed she was worried. She was probably worried that she had asked for too much, so she kept silent. Then Jin said, between them, it would be better to have 20%. He would give her the whole 20%. So let him try to sell them as profitably as possible. Ginny didn't expect such an outcome. She began to look at Jean as her guardian angel. Ginny asked if he would give her so much. Jin replied, he would bring her more runes later, so let her get ready for work, Ginny shouted then. So Jean wanted her to do this on a permanent basis, which was great news for Ginny. She thought that selling all these items with a 20% commission would mean she wouldn't have to farm runes anymore. Ginny was so happy about this that she even burst into tears. Jean noticed this, but did not focus on it. And Ginny was so happy that now she could become a professional trader. Having entrusted Ginny with selling all the rewards from the dungeon, Jin took Pocky's leveling up seriously. Although Pocky looked harmless, it was just a facade. Pocky's punch was incredibly powerful. Pocky is a strong damage dealer, a must-have for any strong player. Jin was pleased with the result. So he praised her and said, great job. At this rate, she'll soon be able to complete D-rank dungeons with her eyes closed. Pocky was happy about the attention, and Jin thought it had been a long time since they had gone into the dungeon together. Jin is sure the others are training hard too, of course. It's instructor Hank, poor little Rami. She'll have to spend the whole day with him. Summoned pets can exist for several hours without a player, and even dissipate themselves after this time. As Jean and Pocky continued walking through the dungeon, Jean asked if Pocky needed anything. A goblin jumped out from around the corner at the boys. Paka's reaction increased, and she dealt with him in an instant. And as if nothing had happened, she asked again what she wanted, and Jin answered, just like Hank or Rami. For example, Hank wanted dumbbells. All this guy cares about is working out, and little Rami likes cream buns. Jin added, let her just say what's on her mind. Pocky thought for a bit, then said, it's enough for her to be useful to Master Jin. How touching, thought Jean. But he still said, oh well, let him measure at least something. Maybe he wanted something to eat. Jin acted like an older brother to his team. In reality, summoned pets don't actually need to eat, but Jin often shares food with those who resemble humans. Since Rami likes cream buns, it means they taste good. So Jin can't eat the treats alone in their presence. So Jin was curious about what she liked, Pocky thought again. He thought that since she was so shy, maybe she liked desserts, like strawberry cake. Finally, Pocky said, actually, there is something. Jean asked what, and she surprised him by asking for fried chicken and beer. An unexpected order, Jin said. Okay, in that case, what skill will Paka unlock next? Pocky replied, the secret stage of Dragon Art, connection. This skill was discovered by Hank. Jin asked, then what about a special day off when he mastered this skill, which made little Pocky happy? And Jin added that they would throw a party for everyone that day with fried chicken and beer. Pocky replied that she would work hard for this weekend. That's when Jin realized she was more excited about the break than the chicken, and he began to worry that he was pushing her too hard. But she gained motivation, and in the meantime, the office guys came to the plot of land. It seems Yuna decided not to just buy a building, but to build it from scratch. Ben asked how the lady found such a place. Yuna replied that she drank it from her grandfather. The headquarters of Ubaek will be built here. There will be an office here, and there will be a dormitory and apartments for the staff, and Yuna will build a bunker under each building. She remembered Jin's request to take care of his family. She needed to keep her promise. And since Jin loves open spaces, this place is perfect for training. Yuna asked if Ben had found the pet she had asked for. Ben replied, yes, the shadow wolf that Yuna had asked him to find. But why him, Ben asked. The cute dog was a gift. He was the one Jean recommended to his sister. Yuna replied that she was going to give it to someone. It seemed like it was time to meet Jin's family. Meanwhile, as Ginny promised, she treated her friends. The girls asked if they could really afford such a treat. Ginny confidently answered, "Of course, they can order whatever they want." The girls laughed and said, yes, successful players are on a completely different level. And Ginny thought that it was all thanks to her brother. The items that Jin gives her are not only numerous, but their characteristics are simply incredible. People were screaming about how great these items were, willing to pay anything, and even offering Ginny their company business cards. Thanks to her brother, her client base had grown very quickly, Ginny thought, and the girls were saying that Jin was in great demand right now. They say he has broken all his records again, and at this rate, he will soon break world records too. The sister was proud of her brother, thinking that her brother was truly amazing. But then the girls started talking about how handsome he was. Ginny's pride immediately vanished. The girls giggled, saying that Jin was such a handsome guy, of course. Ginny did not agree with them, which was logical, and the girls decided that it would be a good idea to find his Instagram since he works for Yuna. Maybe she follows him. Suddenly, a friend shouted, "Isn't this Ginny's account? Why is Yuna following her?" Ginny almost choked on her food. Then she shouted, "No, they're getting something mixed up." Ginny quickly grabbed her phone and logged into her account. And it turned out to be true. Ginny just followed her as a fan when Yuna managed to follow back, Ginny thought. Yuna probably signed up out of politeness because she's Jin's sister, that's probably true. But how do you explain that to your friends who are staring, waiting for an explanation? But Ginny remained silent. So the girls took the initiative and shouted at once, "What is this? Do they really know each other?" The girls asked for an answer, but Ginny had a message, so she asked them to wait a second. The message was from Miss Yuna herself. Ginny was so surprised that it seemed her heart decided to go for a walk. And that's not all. Yuna asked if Ginny was free tomorrow, then Ginny started screaming with joy.